The ghost in the food court, when your dead wife comes back to life. On Christmas Eve, Noah Bennett's carefully rebuilt world shattered in a mall food court when his 5-year-old daughter pointed at a crying woman and whispered the impossible, "Mommy." 3 years. 3 years of grief, single fatherhood, and learning to breathe again, all obliterated by one familiar face in a crowd. Sophie Lane wasn't supposed to exist anymore. She'd vanished without explanation, leaving Noah to explain abandonment to a toddler. But now she's here, trembling by a pretzel stand, and Mia is running toward her. Stay until the end to see how a family destroyed by silence finds its way back. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Riverside Mall on Christmas Eve was a special kind of chaos, the desperate, glittering, last-minute madness of parents who'd procrastinated and couples who'd forgotten. Noah Bennett navigated through it with the weary expertise of a man who'd survived 3 holiday seasons alone, one small hand gripped firmly in his. "Daddy, you're walking too fast." Mia's voice carried that particular 5-year-old pitch that could cut through any crowd noise. Noah slowed immediately, glancing down at his daughter. She wore the red velvet dress her grandmother had sent. Too fancy for a mall trip, but Mia had insisted, and Noah had learned to pick his battles. Her dark curls bounced as she hopped over a wet spot someone's dropped slushie had left on the tile. "Sorry, sweetheart. I just want to get to Santa before the line gets longer." "The line's always long, Daddy." Mia's observation carried the exhausted wisdom of someone who'd seen it all. That's what Christmas is. Long lines and tired mommies. The word hit Noah like it always did, sharp, unexpected, even after 3 years. Mia rarely said it anymore. She'd learned, somehow, that it made adults uncomfortable, that it made her grandmother cry, that it made her father's whole face change in ways she couldn't quite understand but knew weren't good. "Yeah, well," Noah said, forcing brightness into his voice. "Lucky for us, you just have one tired daddy instead." Mia giggled and swung their joined hands. "You're not tired. You're daddy. Daddies don't get tired." If only, Noah thought. If only she knew how tired he'd been for 3 solid years. They rounded the corner past the sporting goods store, heading toward the mall's center court where the massive Christmas display dominated the space. Already Noah could see the line snaking through the velvet ropes. At least 40 kids, maybe more, all bouncing with that specific pre-Santa energy while their parents checked phones and tried to look patient. "Okay, here's the deal," Noah said, stopping to crouch down to Mia's level. "We're going to wait in line. You're going to tell Santa what you want. We'll take the picture, and then we're going home to make cookies. Sound good?" Mia's eyes, her mother's eyes, that same impossible shade of green that still haunted Noah's dreams, went wide. "Can we make the ones with the chocolate chips and the butterscotch chips?" "We can make whatever you want, baby. Even the ones that look like reindeer? Even those." "And can we leave extra cookies for Santa? Because our house is kind of far from the North Pole, and he might be really hungry by the time he gets to us." Noah felt his chest compress the way it always did when Mia showed her heart so openly. She was good, genuinely beautifully good in a way that terrified him. How had he and Sophie created someone so purely kind? And how had he managed not to break that goodness in 3 years of fumbling through single parenthood? "We'll leave him a whole plate," Noah promised. "Now come on, let's get in line before—" Daddy, wait." The change in Mia's voice froze him. She'd gone still, completely still, her small body rigid in a way that made Noah's parental instincts fire on all cylinders. He followed her gaze across the crowded mall, past the fountain with its light display, past the cookie kiosk and the pretzel stand, to a woman, standing alone, crying. Noah's world tilted sideways. No, it couldn't be. "Daddy!" Mia's whisper was barely audible over the mall noise, but it cut through everything else. "Daddy, she's crying." The woman had her back partially turned, one hand pressed to her mouth, shoulders shaking. Dark hair, longer than he remembered, but the same shade, same height, same way of standing with all her weight on one leg when she was upset. Noah's lungs forgot how to work. "Daddy, is that—" "No." The word came out too sharp. "No, Mia, that's not—" But Mia had already yanked her hand free. "MIA, She was fast, too fast, weaving through the crowd with the fearless determination of a child who knew what she'd seen and didn't understand why her father was trying to stop her. "Mommy!" The word echoed through the food court like a gunshot. The woman turned, and Noah's entire carefully constructed reality shattered. Sophie Lane, his ex-wife, Mia's mother, the woman who'd walked out of their lives 3 years ago without explanation or apology, stood 15 feet away, mascara-stained and shaking, staring at the small girl running toward her. Time did something strange. Stretched. Compressed. Noah was moving but couldn't feel his legs, couldn't hear the crowd, couldn't process anything except the impossible fact of Sophie's existence. Mia crashed into Sophie's legs, arms wrapping tight, face pressed against her mother's jeans. "Mommy, you came back! You came back! I knew you would! I told Daddy you would, but he said—" "Mia?" Noah's voice came out strangled as he reached them, his hands instinctively moving to pull his daughter back, to protect her, to shield her from whatever fresh abandonment this was. "Mia, step back." But Mia held on tighter, and Sophie had dropped to her knees, her whole body folding around their daughter, and the sound that came out of her was somewhere between a sob and his name. Noah. 3 years. 3 years since he'd heard her voice. "Don't." The word came out cold, controlled, carrying every ounce of the rage he'd been too tired to feel. "Don't you dare say my name like you have any right to it." People were staring now. A teenage employee from the pretzel stand had paused mid-transaction. A woman with a stroller had stopped to watch, her expression caught between sympathy and judgment. Sophie's face, she looked different, older, smaller somehow, like she'd collapsed inward. Her eyes were the same green as Mia's, but lined with exhaustion Noah recognized because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. "I know," Sophie whispered, still holding Mia, still kneeling on the dirty mall floor. "I know I don't have the right. I know I don't deserve—" "Mommy, why are you sad?" Mia had pulled back just enough to cup Sophie's face with both small hands. "Did someone hurt you? Should Daddy beat them up?" Under any other circumstance, Noah might have laughed. Instead, he felt something crack behind his ribs. "Mia, we need to go." He kept his voice gentle for his daughter, but his eyes stayed locked on Sophie. "We need to go right now." "But Daddy, it's Mommy. She came back." Mia's voice held that absolute certainty only children possessed. "She came back for Christmas." "Mia, please." Sophie's voice broke completely. "Please, Noah, 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. I can explain. I need to explain." "You need?" The laugh that escaped Noah was bitter enough to taste. "You need? Do you have any concept of what you—" He cut himself off, aware of Mia's wide eyes, aware of the growing audience, aware that he was 10 seconds from screaming in a mall food court on Christmas Eve. Sophie stood slowly, still holding one of Mia's hands. She looked smaller than Noah remembered, not just thinner, but diminished somehow, like she'd been slowly erasing herself. She wore jeans he'd never seen before, and a coat that had seen better days. No ring, no makeup, except what the tears had destroyed. No sign of the vibrant, laughing woman he'd married 7 years ago. "I know I have no right," Sophie said quietly. "I know I destroyed everything. I know you have every reason to walk away right now and never look back." But Noah, her eyes met his, and he saw something there he hadn't expected. Not defiance, not excuses, just raw, terrible honesty. "My mother is dying, and she's asking about Mia. That's why I'm here. That's why I came back." The words hit Noah like a physical blow. He'd met Sophie's mother exactly twice during their marriage. The woman had been cold, distant, disapproving of their relationship from the start. And Sophie had barely spoken to her after Mia was born. Some family rift Noah had never fully understood. "Your mother?" He heard the disbelief in his own voice. "Stage 4. Pancreatic. They're saying weeks, maybe days." Sophie's hand tightened on Mia's. "And before you say I don't deserve to ask, you're right, I don't. But she does. She's dying, and she wants to see her granddaughter. She wants—" Sophie's voice cracked again. "She wants to apologize for everything. And I thought, I thought maybe... You thought you could just show up? Noah's control was slipping, his voice rising despite his best efforts. After 3 years of nothing, 3 years of Mia crying herself to sleep, 3 years of me trying to explain to a toddler why her mother didn't love her enough to stay? Noah, please, Daddy, don't yell at Mommy. Mia's small voice cut through the tension. She's sad enough already. Noah looked down at his daughter, his brilliant, empathetic, heartbreaking daughter, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. Mia's free hand had found his, creating a chain between the three of them. Her face held that serious expression she got when she was trying to solve a problem too big for 5-year-old logic. Baby, it's complicated, Noah said quietly. Then uncomplicate it. Mia looked between her parents with absolute certainty. Mommy's here. Mommy's sad. We should help her. That's what we do. We help people who are sad. Sophie made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. She's just like you, she whispered, looking at Noah. That's exactly what you would have said. Don't. Noah's voice went hard again. Don't act like you know anything about who we are now. You left. You chose to leave. I did. Sophie's admission was immediate, unflinching. I absolutely did, and I will spend the rest of my life knowing what that costs. But right now, in this moment, I'm just asking for 5 minutes. Not for me, for my mother, and maybe... She looked down at Mia. Maybe so this little girl doesn't have to grow up with a hole where answers should be. Noah wanted to say no. Every protective instinct screamed at him to grab Mia and run, to preserve the careful stability he'd built over 3 years, to shield his daughter from whatever fresh pain Sophie's presence would bring. But Mia was looking up at him with those eyes, Sophie's eyes, full of hope and trust, and the absolute conviction that her father would do the right thing. And maybe, under all the anger and betrayal, Noah needed answers too. 5 minutes, he said finally. There's a coffee shop on the 2nd floor. 5 minutes, and then we're done. Sophie's relief was visible, her whole body sagging. Thank you. Noah, thank you. Don't thank me. And don't mistake this for forgiveness. We're doing this for Mia. Only for Mia. I understand. They walked to the elevator in silence, Mia between them, holding both their hands, chattering about Santa and cookies and whether reindeer got tired flying so far. Noah couldn't look at Sophie, couldn't process the reality of her physical presence after years of absence. She was a ghost made solid, a memory turned flesh, and every cell in his body screamed wrong, wrong, wrong. The coffee shop was mercifully quiet, tucked into a corner most shoppers missed. Noah ordered Mia a hot chocolate and claimed a table by the window, deliberately putting Mia between them, creating a buffer. A human shield made of innocence and velvet dresses. Sophie slid into her chair like it hurt to sit. She wrapped both hands around the black coffee she'd ordered, the same way she used to, Noah noticed, and hated himself for noticing. Her eyes stayed on Mia, drinking in every detail with an intensity that bordered on desperate. You're so big, Sophie whispered. You were barely 2, and now you're so big. I'm 5, Mia announced proudly. I can count to 100 and write my name and read chapter books. Daddy teaches me before bed. Does he? Sophie's eyes flickered to Noah, something complicated moving behind them. That's wonderful, sweetheart. And I have a best friend named Emma, and we're going to get married when we grow up, but Daddy says we have to wait until we're at least 6. Despite everything, Noah felt his mouth twitch. I said you have to wait until you're at least 30. 6 is close enough, Mia said dismissively. Then, with the brutal directness only children possessed, Mommy, where did you go? Sophie's hands tightened on her coffee cup. Baby, that's complicated. That's what Daddy says. But I'm 5 now. I'm big enough for complicated. Noah wanted to intervene, to protect Sophie from the question, and hated himself for wanting to. She deserved every hard question Mia could throw at her. She deserved the discomfort and the guilt and the weight of abandonment. Your mommy was very sick, Sophie said finally, her voice shaking. In her head and her heart. And she made a really, really bad choice because she thought it would keep you safe. But she was wrong. So wrong. Were you in the hospital? Mia asked. When Emma's grandpa was sick in his head, he had to go to the hospital. Yes, something like that. Did they make you better? The pause stretched too long. Noah watched Sophie struggle with the answer, saw her throat work, saw her eyes shine with fresh tears. I'm still working on getting better, Sophie said finally. Every single day I work on it. But sweetheart, even when I was sickest, I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. I need you to know that. Then why didn't you come back sooner? The question came from Mia, but Noah felt it in his bones. If you loved me, why didn't you come back? Sophie looked at Noah then, really looked at him. And he saw something he hadn't expected. Not pleading for rescue. Not asking him to help her answer. Just acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that this was the question she'd earned and she had to face it alone. Because I was a coward, Sophie said simply. I was scared and sick, and I convinced myself that you were better off without me, that your daddy could give you a better life than I could. And the longer I stayed away, the harder it got to come back. Because how do you explain that to a little girl? How do you say, I left because I was broken and I was too broken to fix myself? But you're fixed now? Mia asked. Not fixed, not all the way, but better, getting better, and finally brave enough to face what I did. Mia absorbed this with the seriousness she gave to all important information. Then, okay, you can come to Christmas dinner. Mia, Noah started. Daddy, she's sad and her mommy's dying. We have to be nice, that's what you always say. Noah closed his eyes. When had his daughter become the adult in the room? Mia, it's not that simple. Why not? Mia looked genuinely confused. We have food. We have space. Mommy needs family. We're her family. She paused. Aren't we still family? The question hung in the air like smoke. Noah looked at Sophie, really looked at her for the first time since the food court. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, not bothering to wipe them away. We're not, Noah started, then stopped. Because how did you explain divorce to a 5-year-old? How did you explain that love could die and families could break, and sometimes people who shared a life couldn't even share a conversation anymore? We're always family, Sophie said quietly, speaking to Mia but looking at Noah. Even when we mess up, even when we hurt each other. The love might get complicated and twisted and broken, but the connection? She swallowed hard. The connection stays, whether we want it to or not. Noah felt something violent move through his chest. Anger, grief, recognition. All of it tangled together until he couldn't separate the threads. 5 minutes are up, he said flatly. Daddy, Mia, we need to go. We need. He stood, his chair scraping harsh against the floor. We still need to see Santa, and then we have cookies to make. But what about Mommy? Mommy has to go see her sick mother. But, Mia. Noah's voice came out sharper than he intended. He saw his daughter flinch and hated himself for it. We're going, now. Mia's lower lip trembled. Can Mommy come back tomorrow? No. Why not? Because Noah wasn't ready. Because seeing Sophie hurt too much. Because he'd spent 3 years learning to breathe without her, and he couldn't survive drowning again. Because we have plans tomorrow. We do? Mia looked confused. What plans? Just plans. Sophie stood slowly. It's okay, sweetheart. Your daddy's right. I should go see my mother. She hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a phone. A cheap flip phone, Noah noticed. Not the iPhone she'd had before. Could I at least have your number? In case my mother wants to see Mia before. She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Noah wanted to say no, wanted to protect himself and Mia from whatever pain this reopening of wounds would bring. But Mia was watching him with those eyes again, and he could feel his daughter's judgment even at 5 years old. Fine. He rattled off his number. But Sophie? If you disappear again, if you hurt her again, you will never, ever get another chance. Are we clear? Crystal. Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. She knelt down in front of Mia. Can can I give you a hug goodbye? Mia threw her arms around Sophie's neck so fast it looked like flight. I love you, Mommy. Even when you were gone, I loved you. Sophie's sob was audible. I love you too, baby girl. So much. More than anything in the whole world. They held on for a long moment, long enough that Noah had to look away, had to focus on the window and the falling snow outside because watching hurt too much. When Mia finally pulled back, Sophie stood quickly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Thank you, she said to Noah, for giving me those 5 minutes and for raising her so beautifully. She's perfect. You did that. All you. Noah didn't respond, couldn't respond. He just took Mia's hand and walked away. They were halfway to the elevator when Mia said, Daddy, you're sad. I'm fine, baby. No, you're not. You have your trying not to cry face. Noah stopped walking, looked down at his daughter, his observant, empathetic, impossible daughter. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? I get it from you. Mia squeezed his hand. It's okay to be sad, Daddy. You always tell me that. It's okay to have big feelings. Noah knelt down, pulling Mia into a hug. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just finally noticed. This time Noah did laugh, broken and wet, but real. I love you, Mia Bean, so much. I love you too, Daddy. She pulled back, her small face serious. But we should still invite Mommy to Christmas. It's the right thing to do. Mia, please? Her mommy's dying and she's all alone and it's Christmas Eve and we're supposed to be nice on Christmas. Noah closed his eyes. Let me think about it. Thinking is just waiting, Mia said wisely, and sometimes waiting is just being scared but calling it something else. Where did she learn this stuff? Noah wondered, then realized, from him. From 3 years of honest conversations about hard things, from bedtime talks about feelings and fear and doing the right thing even when it was difficult. His daughter had learned to be brave because he'd taught her to be brave. Now she was asking him to be brave too. Okay, he heard himself say. Okay, I'll call her, and maybe, if she wants to, she can come for dinner tomorrow. But Mia, listen to me. He took her small face in his hands. This doesn't mean everything is fixed. This doesn't mean Mommy's coming home. It just means we're being kind. Do you understand? I understand. Mia's grin was pure sunshine. Thank you, Daddy. You're the best daddy in the whole world. Noah's phone felt like lead in his pocket as they finally made it to the Santa line. Mia bounced with renewed energy, chattering about what she'd ask for, what cookies they'd make, whether reindeer really liked carrots, or if that was just a myth. Noah smiled and responded and took the obligatory photo and bought the overpriced print. But his mind was stuck in a coffee shop on the second floor, stuck on the sight of Sophie's hands wrapped around that coffee cup, stuck on the sound of her voice saying, I never stopped loving you, stuck on the weight of 3 years of silence, finally broken. That night after Mia was asleep, her new Santa photo clutched to her chest, her belief in Christmas magic fully intact. Noah sat on the couch with a beer he wasn't drinking and a phone number he hadn't called. The Christmas tree lights blinked in the corner. The stockings hung by the fireplace. Everything perfect and peaceful and exactly as he'd built it. Everything he'd risked by letting Sophie back in. His thumb hovered over the dial button. 3 years ago, Sophie had walked out of his life without explanation, without apology, without warning. She'd left him to raise their daughter alone, to explain abandonment to a toddler, to survive on no sleep and frozen dinners and the crushing weight of single parenthood. She'd destroyed him, and now she wanted 5 minutes? Now she wanted understanding? But then he thought about Mia's face in that coffee shop, the hope, the certainty, the absolute conviction that love was simple and family was forever, and hurt could be healed with enough kindness. His daughter believed in reconciliation the way she believed in Santa, completely, without reservation, with the kind of faith adults had long ago learned to surrender. Noah took a breath and dialed. Sophie answered on the first ring. Hello? Her voice, even through the phone, made his chest ache. It's Noah. Pause. Mia wants to know if you'd like to come to Christmas dinner tomorrow. The silence on the other end lasted so long, Noah thought the call had dropped. Sophie? I'm here. I'm just... Her breath shook audibly. Are you sure? Noah, I don't want to push. I'm not sure about anything, Noah cut her off. But Mia is sure. And she's right. It's Christmas. And your mother is dying. And whatever happened between us... He stopped, started again. Whatever happened between us, Mia deserves to know her mother. If you can promise me you won't disappear again, if you can swear to me this isn't some temporary thing that ends with her heart broken, then yes, come to dinner. I promise, Sophie's voice broke. Noah, I swear to you, I'm not going anywhere. Not again. Never again. We'll see, Noah said. Not cruel, just honest. Dinner's at 6. Don't bring anything. Noah, wait. He almost hung up, almost ended the call and went back to the safety of his carefully constructed life. Instead, he said, What? Thank you for giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it. You're right, you don't, but Mia does. So I'm doing this for her, only for her. I understand. Noah ended the call, sat in the dark, and wondered what he'd just done. Tomorrow was Christmas. Tomorrow was supposed to be perfect, just him and Mia and their traditions and their little family of 2. Tomorrow was supposed to be safe. Instead, Noah had just invited a ghost to dinner, and he had no idea if he was opening the door to healing or letting disaster walk right back into his home. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of cruel brightness that made Noah's exhaustion feel personal. He'd slept maybe 3 hours total, his mind cycling through every possible disaster scenario that could unfold at dinner. Around 4 a.m., he'd given up entirely and started prepping food he didn't remember buying, following recipes he'd never made before, as if keeping his hands busy would somehow quiet the chaos in his head. By the time Mia thundered down the stairs at 6:30, because children operated on a single internal clock on Christmas morning, and that clock said now, Noah had already prepared a turkey, assembled 3 side dishes, and reorganized the kitchen twice. Santa came! Mia's shriek could have shattered glass. Daddy, Santa came and he ate all the cookies and the carrots are gone and there's presents under the tree. Noah managed to smile as Mia launched herself at him, pure joy radiating from every inch of her small body. This moment of uncomplicated happiness was what he'd been protecting for 3 years. This was what Sophie had walked away from. Should we see what Santa brought you? Noah asked, setting down the potato peeler. Yes, but Daddy... Mia paused, suddenly serious. Should we wait for Mommy? The word still landed like a fist. Mommy's not coming until dinner, remember? And Santa brought these presents for you. You should open them now. But what if Mommy wants to see me open them? Noah knelt down, taking Mia's hands. Baby, Mommy left before you could even remember Christmas. She doesn't get to... He stopped himself, hearing the bitterness seeping through. Mia was watching him with those 2 observant eyes, already learning to read the spaces between his words. Santa brought these for you, he said more gently. Let's not keep him waiting. The next hour passed in a blur of wrapping paper and squeals, and Mia's running commentary on every single gift. Noah took photos and videos, documenting the joy on his daughter's face, trying to focus on this rather than the dinner looming ahead. But his mind kept drifting to Sophie's hands wrapped around that coffee cup, to the hollowness in her eyes, to the way she'd looked at Mia like she was trying to memorize every detail before the moment disappeared. By noon, Mia was playing with her new art supplies while Noah returned to the kitchen, moving through meal prep with mechanical precision. Turkey in the oven, potatoes boiling, green beans prepped, everything measured and timed and controlled because if he could control the dinner, maybe he could control what happened during it. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Is there anything I can bring? I know you said not to, but I feel strange coming empty-handed. Sophie Noah stared at the message. The fact that she'd saved his number shouldn't have meant anything. The fact that she'd texted instead of calling showed she understood boundaries. These were small things, meaningless things. So why did his hand shake as he typed back? If you want to bring dessert, fine, nothing fancy. We usually just do ice cream. The response came immediately. I remember, mint chocolate chip for you, cookie dough for Mia. Noah's breath caught. Such a small detail, such a nothing piece of information to remember. but it meant Sophie had held on to something, some fragment of the life she'd walked away from. He didn't respond, just set the phone down and went back to chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. "Daddy, you're making your angry face again." Mia had appeared in the doorway, a stuffed unicorn tucked under one arm. "I'm not angry. You're chopping like the carrots hurt your feelings." Despite everything, Noah laughed. "Fair enough. Come here, you can help me set the table." They worked together in comfortable silence, Mia carefully placing each fork and napkin with the gravity of someone entrusted with an important mission. Noah watched her small hands arrange everything just so and felt his chest tighten with a love so fierce it bordered on painful. "Daddy?" Mia asked as she positioned the last plate. "When Mommy comes, are you going to yell at her?" The question was asked with such careful neutrality that Noah knew Mia had been holding on to it, waiting for the right moment. "No, baby, I'm not going to yell." "Are you going to cry?" Noah paused, a glass halfway to the table. "I don't know. Maybe. Would that be scary for you?" Mia considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "A little, but you always say it's okay to cry, that big feelings have to go somewhere." "That's right. So Mommy probably needs to cry too, because her feelings are really big, even bigger than yours maybe." Noah set the glass down carefully. "Why do you say that?" "Because she's the one who left. That has to be the biggest feeling of all." Mia looked up at him. "I bet she cries every day about it." The observation was so astute, so heartbreakingly mature, that Noah had to turn away. His 5-year-old daughter understood something he'd been trying to deny, that whatever had driven Sophie away, it hadn't been lack of love. It had been something else, something bigger than any of them. The afternoon crawled by with excruciating slowness. Noah finished the meal prep, cleaned the kitchen twice, changed his shirt 3 times, and found increasingly pointless tasks to occupy himself. Mia alternated between playing with her new toys and checking the clock with an intensity that would have been funny if Noah wasn't doing the exact same thing. At 5:45, Mia appeared in the living room wearing her red velvet dress from yesterday. She'd attempted to style her own hair and had managed to create something that defied both gravity and logic. "Can you fix my hair, Daddy? I want to look pretty for Mommy." "You're always pretty, sweetheart." But Noah sat down and carefully redid her curls, his hands moving through the familiar motions while his mind raced ahead to what came next. At 5:58, Mia stationed herself by the front window. At 5:59, Noah realized he'd forgotten to breathe for the past 30 seconds. At 6 o'clock exactly, a car pulled up outside. "She's here!" Mia was already running for the door. "Mia, wait!" But his daughter had already yanked open the door and was bouncing on the front step in the cold evening air. Noah moved to the doorway, his body thrumming with an anxiety that felt almost primal. Sophie climbed out of an older Honda Civic that had definitely seen better days. She wore dark jeans and a green sweater that brought out her eyes, and she carried a bag from the grocery store with visible tension in her shoulders. When she saw Mia, her whole face transformed, the exhaustion and fear replaced by something so tender it hurt to witness. "Hi, sweetheart," Sophie said, her voice already thick with emotion. "Mommy!" Mia launched herself down the steps, and Sophie dropped the bag to catch her, lifting Mia up like she weighed nothing. They stood like that in the driveway, Sophie holding Mia, Mia's arms locked around Sophie's neck, both of them crying, and Noah felt something crack open in his chest. This was what he'd wanted to protect Mia from, the complication, the pain, the messy reality of a mother who'd left. But watching them together, he couldn't deny what was also true. This was Mia's mother. And whatever else Sophie had done, the love between them was real. Sophie set Mia down gently, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Then she looked up at Noah, standing in the doorway, and her whole body went still. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." Noah's voice came out flat, carefully neutral. "Come in. It's cold." Sophie retrieved the bag she'd dropped and followed Mia up the steps. As she passed Noah in the doorway, he caught her scent, different perfume than she used to wear, something simpler, and felt disoriented by how familiar and foreign she was all at once. Inside, Sophie stopped in the entryway and just looked around. Her eyes moved over the space, the photos on the walls, the coat hooks with Mia's tiny jackets, the basket of shoes by the door, taking in 3 years of life she'd missed. "It looks good," she said softly. "Homie, you were always better at that than me." Noah didn't respond, didn't know how to, because she was right. He had always been the one who cared about creating a home, about making spaces feel warm and lived in. Sophie had been the free spirit, the one who could live anywhere as long as she had her people. Except then she'd decided she didn't want her people anymore. "I brought dessert," Sophie said, holding up the bag. "Ice cream, the right flavors, and..." She reached in and pulled out a small wrapped box. "Something for Mia, if that's okay." "Mommy got me a present." Mia was already reaching for it. "Not until after dinner," Noah said automatically. Then, to Sophie, "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. I missed." She swallowed hard. "I missed 3 Christmases. I can't get those back, but I can be here for this one." The statement hung in the air between them, weighted with all the years of absence. "Dinner's ready," Noah said finally. "Mia, go wash your hands." Mia scampered off, and suddenly Noah and Sophie were alone in the entryway, 3 feet apart, an ocean of history between them. "Noah, Not yet." Noah's voice was quiet but firm. "Whatever you need to say, not yet. Let's just get through dinner." Sophie nodded, her hands twisting together. "Okay, where should I put the ice cream?" "Freezer's fine. You remember where it is." The words came out more bitter than Noah intended, but Sophie just nodded and moved toward the kitchen. Noah watched her navigate his space, their old space, with the muscle memory of someone who used to live here. She knew which cabinet held the glasses, which drawer had the utensils, the exact squeaky spot on the floor by the sink. Small things, meaningless things, things that proved she'd been real once, that this life had been real. Dinner started stiff and awkward, everyone too aware of the empty chair that was now filled. Noah had put Sophie across from him, with Mia between them, the same protective positioning as yesterday. He passed dishes in silence while Mia filled every gap with her endless Christmas chatter. "And Santa brought me an art set with 100 markers, and I'm going to draw pictures of every animal in the world, and Daddy said I could put them on the fridge, and look, I lost another tooth." Mia opened her mouth wide to display the gap. "That's wonderful, baby." Sophie's voice trembled. "What did the tooth fairy bring you?" $5 whole. Daddy says that's inflation." "Inflation," Noah corrected automatically. "That's what I said." Sophie laughed, really laughed, and the sound was so familiar that Noah felt it in his bones. That laugh had been his favorite sound once, the thing he'd worked to earn, to create, to protect. Now it felt like glass breaking. "This is delicious, Noah," Sophie said quietly, gesturing to the food. "You always could cook. I remember when we first got married, I burned everything, and you just..." She smiled, but it was sad. "You just took over, said cooking was meditation for you." "Still is," Noah said shortly. "I can tell. This is..." She paused, seeming to search for words. "This is better than anything we made back then. You've gotten really good. 3 years of practice." The unspoken addition hung in the air, 3 years of doing it alone. Sophie's face fell, and she went back to pushing food around her plate. Mia, oblivious to the tension, kept up her monologue about kindergarten and her best friend Emma, and how they were going to be professional artists when they grew up, or maybe veterinarians, or possibly both. Noah let Mia's voice wash over him while he watched Sophie from across the table. She ate slowly, carefully, like someone who'd forgotten how to be around other people. She kept her eyes mostly on Mia, drinking in every detail, but occasionally they'd flicker to Noah and he'd see something raw move across her face before she looked away. She was thin, too thin, and there was a fragility to her movements that hadn't been there before, like she might shatter if someone spoke too loudly. What had happened to her? Where had she been for 3 years? The questions burned in Noah's throat, but he swallowed them down. Not yet. Not with Mia here. Not while his daughter was so happy, so convinced that this dinner meant everything was fixed. "Daddy, can Mommy see my room?" Mia asked suddenly. "I want to show her all my stuffed animals." Noah's instinct was to say no, to keep Sophie contained in public spaces, away from the intimate details of their daily life. But Mia was looking at him with such hope. and he heard his own words echo back. Sometimes waiting is just being scared, but calling it something else. After dinner, he said, if your mom wants to. I'd love to, Sophie said immediately, her eyes shining. If that's okay with your dad. It's fine, Noah lied. The meal continued with its awkward rhythm, Mia talking, Sophie responding, Noah silent unless directly addressed. He felt like a ghost in his own life, watching from the outside as his daughter and ex-wife reconnected over mashed potatoes and green beans. When dessert came, Sophie dished out the ice cream with the careful precision of someone desperate not to make a mistake. She gave Mia an extra scoop without asking, the same way she used to, and handed Noah his bowl with a small, tentative smile. Mint chocolate chip, she said. Some things don't change. A lot of things change, Noah replied, but he took the bowl. After dinner, Mia grabbed Sophie's hand and dragged her toward the stairs. Come on, Mommy, I have so much to show you. Noah watched them go, Mia bouncing with energy, Sophie following like she was being led into something sacred. Then he was alone with the dishes, the leftovers, the evidence of a meal that had somehow survived despite all odds. He cleaned in silence, letting his hands work through familiar motions while his mind tried to process the surreal reality of Sophie's presence. She was here, in his house. After 3 years of nothing, she was sitting on Mia's bed right now, probably surrounded by stuffed animals and princess posters and all the evidence of a childhood she'd missed. Part of Noah wanted to march upstairs and tell her to leave, to protect the space he and Mia had created, to keep Sophie's abandonment from contaminating the life they'd built. But another part, a part he didn't want to acknowledge, wondered what Sophie was feeling right now. What it was like to walk back into a life you'd left behind and see everything you'd missed. Upstairs, he could hear Mia's voice, muffled but excited, and Sophie's softer responses. The sound of it, mother and daughter, together, created a harmony Noah had convinced himself they didn't need. He was putting away the last dish when he heard footsteps on the stairs. Sophie appeared in the doorway, her eyes red but dry, her whole posture radiating exhaustion and something else Noah couldn't quite name. She's asking for you, Sophie said quietly. She wants to show me her bedtime routine, and apparently that's not complete without you reading to her. Noah dried his hands on a towel, not looking at Sophie. Where is she? Getting into pajamas. She's very specific about the order of everything. I know. I'm the one who created the routine. The words came out sharper than Noah intended, and Sophie flinched. Good, part of him thought viciously. Let her feel a fraction of the pain she's caused. But Mia called from upstairs, Daddy, I'm ready! And Noah had to shelve his anger and be a father first. Upstairs, Mia was already in bed, her new unicorn clutched to her chest, practically vibrating with the effort of staying still. You have to read the Christmas book, she informed Noah, so Mommy can see how we do it. Mia, maybe your mom is tired. I'm not tired, Sophie said from the doorway. I'd love to see your routine if that's okay. It wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay, but Mia was looking at Noah with those eyes again, and he was tired of being the bad guy. Fine. He grabbed the book from Mia's shelf, a Christmas story they'd read every night in December, and sat on the edge of the bed. Sophie hovered uncertainly until Mia patted the other side. You sit there, Mommy, like a sandwich. I'm the meat, and you guys are the bread. Noah's jaw tightened, but he didn't protest as Sophie carefully sat on the opposite side of the bed. Now they bracketed Mia, close enough that Noah could feel the heat of Sophie's presence, smell that unfamiliar perfume, sense her breathing. It was too much. Too intimate. Too reminiscent of a life they didn't have anymore. But Mia snuggled into her pillows, content and secure between her parents, and Noah started reading. His voice moved through the familiar words while his mind spun in circles. He was aware of every shift in Sophie's posture, every quiet breath she took, every time her eyes moved from the book to Mia to him. The weight of her attention felt like a physical thing, pressing against him, demanding acknowledgement. When he finished the story, Mia was fighting sleep, her eyes drooping even as she tried to stay awake. Can Mommy tuck me in? She asked, her words slurring slightly. Noah looked at Sophie. She looked like she might cry. Of course, Sophie whispered. She leaned down and pressed a kiss to Mia's forehead, her hand smoothing back their daughter's curls. Sleep tight, baby girl. Dream about sugar plums and reindeer. Will you be here in the morning? Mia asked, already half asleep. Sophie's eyes found Noah's across the bed. He saw the question there, the desperate hope, the fear of his answer. No, Noah said before Sophie could respond. Your mom has to go home tonight. But, Mia. Noah's voice was gentle but final. Close your eyes. Santa's reindeer are tired from their trip, and you need to rest too. Mia made a small sound of protest, but exhaustion won. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out, her small body relaxed into sleep. Noah and Sophie sat on either side of her for a long moment, neither moving, neither speaking. The bedside lamp cast soft shadows across Mia's face, making her look even younger, more vulnerable. She's perfect, Sophie finally whispered. Noah, she's so perfect. I know. Noah stood carefully, gesturing for Sophie to follow. They slipped out of the room and Noah pulled the door mostly closed, leaving it cracked the way Mia liked. In the hallway, the silence felt dangerous. They stood 2 feet apart, the space between them crackling with 3 years of unspoken words. Thank you, Sophie said, for letting me come tonight, for letting me see her, be with her. I know I don't deserve. You're right. You don't. Noah crossed his arms, every defense mechanism activating. So let's talk about what you do deserve. Let's talk about where you've been for 3 years. Let's talk about why you left without a word and why you think showing up now makes any of it okay. Sophie's face crumpled. Can we go downstairs? I don't want Mia to hear this. Scared she'll learn the truth about her mother? Noah, please. The desperation in her voice was real enough that Noah relented. He led her downstairs to the living room, putting distance between them and Mia's room. Sophie sat on the edge of the couch like she didn't trust herself to get comfortable. Noah remained standing, arms crossed, every line of his body screaming defense. Talk, he said flatly. Explain to me how you left your daughter when she was 2 years old. Explain to me how you just walked away from everything we built. Explain to me how I'm supposed to... His voice cracked. How I'm supposed to trust anything you say when you prove that love means nothing to you. It meant everything to me, Sophie said, her voice breaking. That was the problem. That makes no sense. I know it doesn't, but Noah... She looked up at him, and her eyes held so much pain that Noah almost looked away. Almost. After Mia was born, something broke in me. Not just broke, shattered. And I tried to hide it, tried to power through it, tried to convince myself it was just normal new mother exhaustion. Postpartum depression, Noah said. That's what you told Mia yesterday. It was more than that. It was... Sophie's hands twisted in her lap. It was like drowning in a room full of air. I would look at Mia and feel nothing, or worse than nothing. I'd feel terror. Terror that I'd hurt her, that I'd fail her, that my darkness would infect her. Noah felt something cold slide down his spine. You never told me that. Because I was ashamed. Because good mothers don't think about hurting their babies. Because I was terrified you'd take her away from me if you knew how broken I was. So instead you took yourself away. Yes. Sophie's admission was immediate, unflinching. I convinced myself it was the right thing, that she'd be better off with just you, that my presence was poison, and the longer I stayed away, the harder it got to come back. Because how do you explain that to your husband? Your daughter? How do you say, I left because I was dying inside and I thought it would save you? Noah sank into the chair across from her, his legs suddenly unreliable. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd spent 3 years imagining every possible reason for Sophie's disappearance. Another man, boredom, resentment, simple cruelty. He'd never considered this. You should have told me, he said, his voice rough. We were married. We were supposed to be partners. You should have... I know I should have. But I wasn't rational, Noah. I was sick. Really, truly sick in a way I didn't understand until it was too late. Where did you go? Sophie took a shaky breath. First, nowhere. I stayed with a friend you never met, someone from my old job. She convinced me to see a doctor, and the doctor convinced me to check myself into a program. I spent 4 months in a psychiatric facility in Colorado learning how to function again. Noah's hands gripped the arms of his chair. 4 months. You were in treatment for 4 months and you never called, never wrote, never let us know you were alive. Because I thought you'd try to bring me home, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't safe yet. Not for Mia, not for myself. And after? After, I got a job in Boulder. Nothing impressive. I waited tables, worked retail, lived in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates. I went to therapy twice a week, took my medication, tried to build a version of myself that could survive existing. Sophie's voice dropped to barely a whisper. And every single day I thought about coming home. Every single day I told myself tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be brave enough. Tomorrow I'll be better enough. Tomorrow I'll know what to say. But you never did. No, because I'm a coward. Sophie looked directly at Noah, her eyes red but clear. I'm a coward who convinced herself that absence was love, that staying away was protection. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, 3 years had passed, and I had no idea how to undo what I'd done. Noah sat with this for a long moment, trying to process 3 years of imagined scenarios against the reality sitting in front of him. Part of him wanted to rage, to throw Sophie's explanations back in her face, to tell her that mental illness didn't excuse abandonment, that being sick didn't erase the damage she'd caused. But another part, a part he didn't want to acknowledge, understood. Because he'd been there too, those first months after Sophie left. The darkness, the overwhelming terror, the certainty that he was failing Mia every single day. The only difference was that he hadn't had the luxury of leaving. Your mother, Noah said finally. How sick is she really? Dying. Really dying. They're saying maybe 2 weeks. Sophie's face twisted. We never had a good relationship. She disapproved of you, of our marriage, of how young we were. When I got pregnant, she told me I was throwing my life away. So I cut her off. Completely. For years. And now? Now she's dying, and she wants to make peace. She sent a letter to my last known address. It got forwarded 3 times before it found me. She said, Sophie's voice broke again. She said she was wrong about everything, about you, about us, about Mia, and she wants to meet her granddaughter before she dies. Does Mia need to be part of that? Noah asked. Does she need to meet a dying stranger? I don't know. That's why I came to you first, because you're her father and you've been making all the decisions for 3 years, and I have no right to swoop in and make demands. Sophie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But Noah, if you could have seen my mother's face in that letter, the regret, the grief. She spent years being hard and cold and judgmental, and now she's running out of time to be anything else. Noah thought about his own parents, gone for 5 years now, killed in a car accident when Mia was just a baby. He thought about all the things left unsaid, the reconciliations that never happened, the time they'd all assumed they had. If Mia meets her, Noah said slowly, I'm there. Every second. And at the first sign that it's too much for her, we leave. Are we clear? Sophie's relief was palpable. Crystal, thank you. Thank you, Noah. Don't thank me. I'm doing this for Mia. Only for Mia. I know. Sophie stood, wrapping her arms around herself. I should go. It's late, and I've already pushed your boundaries enough for one day. Noah walked her to the door, maintaining careful distance. At the threshold, Sophie turned back. Noah, I know I can't fix the past. I know I can't erase 3 years of pain, but I'm asking, begging, for the chance to do better, to be present, to be the mother Mia deserves. Actions, Noah said, not words. If you want to prove you've changed, show me. Show up. Be consistent. Be reliable. Because Mia's heart is on the line here, and I will not let you break it again. I understand. Sophie pulled out her phone. My mother's in hospice about an hour from here. Could we maybe visit tomorrow, just for a little while? Every instinct told Noah to say no, to slow this down, to protect Mia from too much too soon. But he thought about his own mother's last words to him. Don't wait, Noah. Don't assume you have time. Say what needs to be said while you still can. Text me the address, he said finally. We'll come at 2, 1 hour maximum. And Sophie? He waited until she met his eyes. If this is some manipulation, if you're lying about any of this, I will make sure you never see Mia again. Do you understand? I'm not lying. I swear on everything I am, I'm not lying. Noah nodded and stepped back, already closing the door. Through the window, he watched Sophie walk to her car, watched her sit in the driver's seat for a long moment with her head bowed. Then she started the engine and drove away, her taillights disappearing into the snowy night. Noah stood in his quiet house, surrounded by the remnants of Christmas dinner, and felt the full weight of what he'd just agreed to. He'd let Sophie back in. Not all the way, not even close, but enough. Enough to hope. Enough to risk. Enough to break Mia's heart all over again if this went wrong. Upstairs, Mia slept peacefully, dreaming her 5-year-old dreams, convinced that Christmas had brought her mother back. And Noah stood guard in the darkness, wondering if he'd just made the worst mistake of his life, or the first step towards something resembling healing. Noah didn't sleep that night either. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening, dissecting every word Sophie had said for signs of deception or manipulation. But all he could see was the raw honesty in her eyes, the shame, the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, forgiveness was possible. Around 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep entirely and went to check on Mia. She was sprawled across her bed in that boneless way children slept, one arm hanging off the edge, her new unicorn clutched to her chest. Peaceful, innocent, trusting that the adults in her life would protect her. Noah stood in the doorway and made himself a promise. Whatever happened with Sophie, whatever reconciliation or ruin lay ahead, Mia would be okay. He'd make sure of it, even if it destroyed him in the process. Morning came too quickly. Mia bounced into Noah's room at 7, already dressed and buzzing with questions about when they'd see Mommy again, where Grandma lived, whether dying people could still eat cookies. Noah answered what he could and deflected what he couldn't, moving through their morning routine on autopilot while his mind spun ahead to the afternoon. By noon, he'd changed his shirt 4 times and reorganized Mia's hair twice. She tolerated his nervous energy with the patience of someone who'd learned to read her father's moods. "Daddy, you're doing the worry thing again," she observed as Noah adjusted her jacket for the 3rd time. "I'm not worried. I'm just making sure you're ready." "I'm 5. I've been ready since breakfast." Mia patted his hand with exaggerated sympathy. "It's okay to be scared, remember? You always tell me that." Noah crouched down to her level, taking in his daughter's serious expression. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You're just finally noticing." This time Noah did laugh, pulling Mia into a hug that was probably too tight, but she didn't complain. When he pulled back, he made sure his voice was steady and clear. "Listen to me, baby. We're going to meet your grandmother today. She's very sick, and the place we're going might feel strange. There might be machines and medicine smells and other things that seem scary. But I'll be right there with you the whole time, okay? And if you want to leave, we leave. No questions asked." Mia nodded solemnly. "Is Mommy going to be there?" "Yes, your mom will be there." "Good. Because Mommy needs us. I can tell." The observation landed like a weight in Noah's chest. His 5-year-old daughter had somehow intuited what he'd been trying to deny, that Sophie wasn't just back for her mother's sake. She was back because she was drowning, and she needed the people she'd left behind to throw her a line. The question was whether Noah had any lines left to throw. They arrived at Riverside Hospice at exactly 2 o'clock. The building tried to look welcoming with its warm brick exterior and carefully maintained gardens, but there was no disguising what it was. A place people came to die with dignity and as little pain as modern medicine could manage. Sophie was waiting in the lobby, perched on the edge of a chair like she might bolt at any second. When she saw them come through the automatic doors, relief and terror warred across her face in equal measure. "You came," she said, standing quickly. "I wasn't sure if you'd really come." "We said we would." Noah kept his voice neutral, his hand firm on Mia's shoulder. "How's your mother?" "Awake. Lucid, mostly." The hospice nurse said, "This is probably the best we'll get." Sophie's eyes dropped to Mia, and something in her expression softened. "Hi, sweetheart. Thank you for coming with me today." "Hi, Mommy." Mia seemed suddenly shy, pressing closer to Noah's leg. "Is your mommy nice?" Sophie's laugh was brittle. "That's a complicated question. But she wants to be. She's trying to be. That's something, right?" Noah wasn't sure how to answer that, so he didn't. Instead, he said, "Lead the way." And remember, 1 hour maximum. They followed Sophie through hallways that smelled of antiseptic and artificial flowers, past rooms where families sat in quiet vigil, past nursing stations where staff spoke in hushed tones about medication schedules and comfort measures. Mia's hand found Noah's and squeezed tight. "It's okay, baby," Noah murmured. "I've got you." Sophie stopped outside room 247 and turned to face them, her whole body radiating anxiety. "Before we go in, I need to tell you something. My mother can be blunt, direct. She doesn't always think before she speaks. If she says something that hurts your feelings, Mia, I need you to know it's not about you. It's about her own regrets, okay?" "What's regrets?" Mia asked. "It's when you wish you'd done things differently," Noah said quietly. "When you realize you made mistakes." "Oh, like when I broke Emma's favorite crayon and I felt bad?" "Exactly like that, except bigger." Sophie took a deep breath and knocked softly before pushing open the door. The room was small but bright, afternoon sunlight streaming through windows that looked out on the garden. The woman in the bed was thin to the point of skeletal, her skin paper white, her breathing labored even with the oxygen tube under her nose. But her eyes, sharp and green, exactly like Sophie's and Mia's, tracked their entrance with fierce intelligence. "You actually came," the woman said, her voice raspy but strong. "I thought you'd talk yourself out of it." "Hi, Mom." Sophie moved to the bedside, her posture stiff. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dying." "Let's skip the pleasantries." The woman's eyes found Noah, and he felt the weight of her assessment. "You must be the husband. The one I said wasn't good enough for my daughter." "Ex-husband," Noah corrected. "And I believe you also said I was settling her into mediocrity, and that our marriage was a mistake that would end in tears." A ghost of a smile touched the woman's lips. "I did say that, didn't I? Turns out I was wrong. The marriage ended, but not because of you." Her gaze shifted to Mia, who was half hiding behind Noah's leg. "And this must be Amelia." "Everyone calls me Mia," his daughter said quietly. "Mia." The woman seemed to taste the name. "Would you come closer, child? My eyes aren't what they used to be." Mia looked up at Noah for permission. He nodded, keeping one hand on her shoulder as they approached the bed together. Sophie stood on the other side, her hands twisted together, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. "You look just like your mother did at your age," the woman said, studying Mia with an intensity that bordered on hungry. "Same eyes, same stubborn chin. Tell me, Mia, do you know who I am?" "You're my grandma," Mia said, "and you're dying, and that makes you sad." The bluntness of 5-year-old honesty hung in the air. Noah winced, but the woman in the bed actually laughed, a dry, crackling sound that turned into a cough. "Smart girl. Yes, I'm dying, and yes, it makes me sad. But do you know what makes me sadder?" She waited, and Mia shook her head. "That I wasted years being angry about nothing, that I pushed away your mother because I was too proud to admit I was wrong, that I never got to know you because I was too stubborn to apologize." "It's okay," Mia said with the easy forgiveness of childhood. "People make mistakes. That's what Daddy says. The important thing is saying sorry and doing better." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Noah with something that might have been respect. "You're raising her right. Better than I raised mine." "We're doing our best," Noah said stiffly. "Sophie." The woman's attention shifted back to her daughter. "I need to say this while I still can. I was wrong. About everything. About Noah. About your marriage. About the way I treated you when you got pregnant. I was terrified of you making my mistakes, so I pushed you toward different mistakes instead. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sophie's face crumpled. "Mom, I'm not finished." The woman's voice had gained strength, urgency. "When you disappeared, I told myself it was what you deserved for making reckless choices. But Sophie, I looked for you. For 2 years I looked. I hired investigators. I called hospitals. I imagined every terrible thing that could have happened, and I realized something." She paused, struggling for breath. "I realized that my anger was just fear. Fear that you'd turn out like me, bitter and alone and full of regrets I couldn't undo." "You're not alone," Sophie whispered. "I'm here now." For how long? Another day? 2? The woman shook her head weakly. No. I need you to promise me something. I need you to promise you won't do what I did. Don't waste decades being proud when you should be present. Don't let your pain become your daughter's inheritance. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying. Then try harder. The woman's gaze shifted to Noah. And you. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I'm asking anyway. Give her a chance, not for me, not even for her, for that little girl standing there who deserves to know both her parents. Noah's jaw tightened. With all due respect, you don't know what you're asking. You don't know what the last 3 years have been like. You're right, I don't. But I know what it's like to live with regret eating you alive from the inside. I know what it's like to realize too late that pride is a poor substitute for family. The woman's breathing had become more labored, each word clearly costing her. I'm dying, young man. In a few days, maybe a week, I'll be gone. And the only thing I'll regret more than the years I wasted is knowing I might have cost my granddaughter the chance at having a whole family. We are a whole family, Noah said, his voice hard. Mia and me. We're whole. Are you? The question was gentle but cut deep. Or have you been holding your breath for 3 years, waiting for the other shoe to drop? The accuracy of the observation stole Noah's response. Because yes, that was exactly what he'd been doing. Living in a state of perpetual tension, waiting for the next disaster, never quite able to relax into the life he'd built because part of him was still waiting for Sophie to explain, to return, to make sense of the senseless. Mia tugged on Noah's hand. Daddy, can I show Grandma my drawing? The one I made at school? The shift in topic was so abrupt, so perfectly 5-year-old, that Noah felt something unclench in his chest. Of course, baby. Mia dug in her little backpack and produced a piece of construction paper covered in crayon renderings of stick figures. This is me and Daddy and Emma. And these are all the animals we're going to save when we're veterinarians. Except Emma wants to be an astronaut now, so maybe just me. The woman took the drawing with trembling hands, studying it like it was the Mona Lisa. It's beautiful, Mia. You're very talented. I know. Daddy says I get it from Mommy. She used to draw too before she got sad in her head. Sophie made a choked sound. The woman looked at her daughter with something fierce in her eyes. Yes, your mother was very good at art, before she got sad, before I told her art was impractical and she needed to focus on something sensible. The woman's voice dropped. I have a lot to answer for, more than I can fix in the time I have left. They stayed for the full hour, the conversation drifting between heavy and light, between regret and tentative hope. Mia, with the resilience of children, adapted quickly to the strangeness of the hospice room. She showed her grandmother her other school projects, told her about Emma in kindergarten and her elaborate plans for when she grew up. The woman listened like each word was precious, asking questions, laughing at Mia's observations, soaking up the presence of a granddaughter she'd never thought she'd meet. Sophie mostly stayed quiet, watching the interaction with tears streaming silently down her face. Noah watched too, his emotions a tangled mess of anger and grief and something he refused to name. Because this moment of connection between Mia and her grandmother wouldn't be happening if Sophie hadn't left. Wouldn't exist if she'd stayed and worked through her darkness with him by her side, but it also wouldn't be happening if Sophie hadn't come back. If she hadn't found the courage to face what she'd run from. And Noah didn't know what to do with that contradiction. When a nurse came in to check vitals and gently suggest that perhaps Mrs. Lane needed rest, Mia gave her grandmother a careful hug, mindful of the tubes and wires. I'll come back and visit, Mia promised, and I'll bring more drawings. I'd like that very much, sweetheart. The woman's eyes found Noah. Thank you for bringing her. I know it wasn't easy. Noah just nodded. Words felt impossible. In the hallway, Sophie walked them back to the entrance in silence. When they reached the lobby, she turned to face them, her expression raw and vulnerable. Thank you, she said quietly. Both of you. It meant everything. She has pancreatic cancer, Noah said, not quite a question. Stage 4. Yes, they did everything they could, but it spread too fast. Now it's just comfort measures and waiting. How long do they think? Days? A week at most? Sophie's voice broke. She wants to see Mia again. Would that be okay? I know it's asking a lot, but we'll come back tomorrow, Mia announced before Noah could respond. After lunch. And I'll bring her my really good drawings, not just the school ones. Sophie's face lit with something like joy. Really? You do that? Of course, she's my grandma. Mia said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. And she's nice now, not like before. How do you know she wasn't nice before? Noah asked. Because Mommy was scared of her. I could tell. Mia looked at Sophie with those two wise eyes. But you're not scared anymore, are you, Mommy? Sophie knelt down, taking Mia's hands. No, baby, I'm not scared anymore. I'm just sad that I waited so long to stop being scared. That's okay. You're here now. Mia said it with the absolute certainty that only children possessed, the belief that presence erased absence, that now mattered more than then, that love was always enough. Noah wished he could believe that too. They said their goodbyes in the parking lot. Sophie hugged Mia tight, then stood and looked at Noah with something complicated moving behind her eyes. I know you're doing this for Mia, she said quietly. Not for me. And I'm grateful. But Noah, I need you to know something. She paused, seeming to gather courage. I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Whether you ever forgive me or not, whether we ever figure out how to be in the same room without it hurting, I'm staying. I'm going to be in Mia's life, consistently, reliably, the way I should have been all along. We'll see, Noah said, because he'd learned the hard way that promises meant nothing, only actions mattered. Only time would tell if Sophie had really changed, or if this was just another beautiful lie wrapped in good intentions. In the car, Mia was unusually quiet. Noah glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her staring out the window, her small face serious. You okay, baby? Is Grandma going to die soon? The question was asked with the straightforward curiosity of childhood, without the weight of existential dread adults carried. Noah chose his words carefully. Yes, sweetheart. Probably very soon. And then we'll never see her again? Not in the way we saw her today, but we'll remember her. And you made her really happy today. Sometimes that's the best gift we can give someone, letting them know they mattered. Mia processed this in silence for a moment. Then, I'm glad Mommy came back, even if it's sad, because now Grandma got to meet me before she died, and Mommy doesn't have to be alone when Grandma goes away. Noah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Out of the mouths of babes, as the saying went. His 5-year-old daughter had just articulated something he'd been trying not to acknowledge, that Sophie needed them. Not just for Mia's sake or her mother's sake, but because she was barely holding herself together, and grief might be the thing that finally broke her completely. And despite everything, despite the anger and betrayal and 3 years of abandonment, Noah couldn't quite bring himself to wish that on her. That night, after Mia was asleep, Noah sat on the couch with a beer he wasn't drinking and his phone in his hand. Sophie's number was on the screen. His thumb hovered over it for a long time before he finally pressed call. She answered immediately. Noah? Is everything okay? Is Mia... Mia's fine. She's asleep. Noah cut her off before panic could take root. I'm calling because we need to set some ground rules. If you're really staying, if this is really happening, we need boundaries. Okay? Sophie's voice was cautious. I'm listening? First, you don't make promises to Mia that you can't keep. I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable to say no. Better she's disappointed now than devastated later. Understood. Second, you don't just show up at our house without calling first. Mia needs routine and stability. You can't disrupt that on a whim. Agreed. Third, and this is non-negotiable, you get help, real help, therapy, medication, whatever you need to stay stable. Because I will not watch you spiral again. I won't let Mia watch it either. There was a long pause. Then Sophie's voice came through, thick with emotion. I'm already in therapy, twice a week. Have been for 2 years, and I'm on medication that I take religiously. I have a psychiatrist I check in with monthly. I'm doing the work, Noah. I swear to you, I'm doing the work. Noah felt something in his chest ease slightly. Good. That's good. Is that all? No. Noah took a breath. I need to know your plans. Where are you living? How are you supporting yourself? Because if you're going to be in Mia's life regularly, I need to know you're stable, not just mentally, but practically. I'm staying at a motel near the hospice right now. Extended stay place, nothing fancy. I've been working as a freelance graphic designer. Remote work, decent pay. I have savings. Not much, but enough to get an apartment if I decide to stay in the area permanently. If you decide? When, Sophie corrected softly. When I decide. Which is now. I'm staying, Noah. I told you that. Words are easy. I know. That's why I'm going to prove it. Tomorrow I'm looking at apartments. Places within 20 minutes of you so I can be close to Mia without crowding you. Places with good school districts in case... She trailed off. In case what? In case someday we figure out some kind of custody arrangement. I'm not asking for that now. I know I have to earn it. But Noah, that's my goal. Not to take Mia from you, never that, but to be present. To be a real parent, not just a visitor. Noah closed his eyes. A year ago, hell, a week ago, the idea of sharing custody with Sophie would have been unthinkable. But now, hearing the determination in her voice, seeing the way Mia lit up around her mother, he couldn't dismiss it out of hand. One step at a time, he said finally. Let's get through your mother's death first. Let's see if you actually stay after that. I will. Sophie's voice held absolute conviction. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm not leaving again. I can't. I won't survive walking away twice. After they hung up, Noah sat in the darkness and tried to process the impossible reality of his life. A week ago, Sophie had been a ghost, a memory, a scar he'd learned to live with. Now she was flesh and blood again, complicated and broken and desperately trying to make amends, and Noah had no idea if he was strong enough to let her try. The next 3 days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Each afternoon, Noah and Mia visited the hospice. They'd find Sophie already there, sitting by her mother's bed, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes just holding her hand in silence. Mia would burst in with her latest drawings and observations, bringing life and noise to the quiet room where death waited patiently. Mrs. Lane, Noah learned her first name was Catherine, though she insisted Mia call her Grandma Kathy, grew visibly weaker each day. But she rallied for Mia's visits, storing up energy to hear about kindergarten dramas and Emma's latest declarations about their future wedding. On the third day, Catherine asked to speak with Noah alone. Sophie took Mia to the hospice garden, leaving Noah sitting by the bed of a woman who'd once told him he wasn't good enough for her daughter. I'm dying, Catherine said without preamble. We both know I won't last much longer, so I'm going to be blunt because I don't have time for subtlety. Okay, Noah said warily. You love my daughter. You still love her, even though you're furious with her, even though she hurt you in ways you're not sure you can forgive. I can see it every time you look at her when you think no one's watching. Noah's first instinct was to deny it. But what was the point? This woman would be dead within days. She'd earned honesty. I don't know what I feel, he admitted. Anger, definitely. Grief, betrayal. But love? He shook his head. I loved who Sophie was. I don't know who she is now. Neither does she. That's the whole problem. Catherine's eyes were sharp despite the morphine. My daughter spent her whole life trying to be perfect because I demanded perfection. And when she cracked under the pressure of motherhood, she didn't know how to ask for help. She only knew how to run. That's not an excuse. No, it's an explanation. There's a difference. Catherine struggled to sit up slightly, and Noah automatically reached to help her adjust the pillows. Thank you. Now listen to me. I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm not even asking you to take her back. I'm asking you to let her prove herself, to give her time and space to show you she's changed. For how long? 6 months? A year? 5 years? How long do I keep Mia's heart exposed while we wait to see if Sophie disappears again? That's a fair question, and I don't have a good answer. Catherine paused, breathing labored. But I'll tell you this. Sophie is more terrified of abandoning Mia again than you are of being abandoned. That fear is what will keep her grounded. That fear is what will make her fight. Fear isn't enough. Love wasn't enough. Why would fear be different? Because fear has made her face what love let her run from, herself, her illness, her capacity to cause harm. She's looked at the worst parts of herself and decided to do the work anyway. That's not nothing, Noah. Before Noah could respond, a nurse appeared to check vitals and administer medication. When she left, Catherine looked exhausted, her brief burst of energy depleted. "I'm tired," she said quietly. "But one more thing. In my bedside table, bottom drawer. There's an envelope with Mia's name on it. Give it to her when she's older, when she can understand complicated things." "What is it?" "The truth. About family and mistakes and second chances. About how you can love someone and still hurt them. About how it's never too late to try to do better, even if better comes too late to fix what you broke." Catherine's eyes drifted closed. "Tell Sophie I love her. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'm proud of who she's becoming, even though I won't be here to see it." Noah retrieved the envelope, thick, sealed, marked with Mia's name in shaking handwriting. He slipped it into his jacket pocket and stood to leave. "Noah," Catherine's eyes opened one more time. "Thank you for being the father Mia needed, and for giving Sophie one more chance to be the mother she wants to be." Those were the last words Catherine Lane spoke to Noah. By morning, she'd slipped into unconsciousness. By evening, she was gone. Sophie called Noah at 9 p.m., her voice wrecked. "She's gone. My mother's gone, and I never got to. There were so many things I never said, and now—" "Where are you?" Noah asked, already reaching for his keys. "At the hospice. They're asking about arrangements, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this alone." "You're not alone." The words came out before Noah could stop them. "Stay there. I'm coming." He called his neighbor, a retired teacher who'd helped with Mia countless times, and 20 minutes later he was pulling into the hospice parking lot. Sophie was sitting on a bench outside, wrapped in a thin jacket, shaking from cold or grief or both. Noah sat beside her, maintaining careful distance. "Have you eaten?" Sophie shook her head. "When's the last time you had water?" "I don't know. This morning, maybe?" Noah pulled a water bottle from his glove compartment, he always kept them for Mia, and handed it to Sophie. "Drink. Then we're going to go inside and figure out what needs to happen next." "I can't." Sophie's voice broke completely. "I can't walk back in there and see her body and know that I wasted years being angry when I should have been present, that I was so caught up in my own pain that I let her die thinking I hated her." "Did you hate her?" "No, I was hurt and angry and disappointed, but I never hated her." Sophie's hands twisted together. "And now she's gone, and I can't tell her that. Can't tell her that I understood why she was hard on me, that I forgive her for all the ways she failed me because I finally understand how easy it is to fail the people you love." Noah let Sophie cry, making no move to comfort her, but not leaving either. Just present, just witnessing. When her sobs finally subsided into shaking breaths, he said, "She knew. Your mother knew you didn't hate her. She told me so. Right before the end." Sophie looked at him with red, swollen eyes. "What else did she say?" "That she was proud of you, that she was sorry, that she loved you." Noah paused, then pulled out the envelope. "And she left this for Mia. Said to give it to her when she's older." Sophie took the envelope with trembling hands, staring at her mother's handwriting. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She really did change. At the very end, she finally changed. "People can change," Noah said quietly, "if they want it badly enough. They're willing to do the work." The implication hung between them, clear as day. Sophie met his eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that change was possible, that second chances existed, that maybe, just maybe, families could break and still find ways to heal. They went inside together, made the necessary calls, filled out the paperwork, made decisions about cremation and memorial services. It took hours, all the mundane details that death required, but Noah stayed for all of it. Not because he'd forgiven Sophie, not because he'd forgotten the pain, but because sometimes being human meant showing up for someone's grief, even when they'd caused you plenty of your own. It was almost midnight when they finally left the hospice. In the parking lot, Sophie turned to Noah with exhaustion and gratitude warring across her face. "Thank you for coming, for helping, for not leaving me to do this alone." You're Mia's mother, Noah said, and Mia loves you. That means something. What about you? Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. Does it mean something to you? Noah looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the exhaustion and grief to the woman underneath, changed but still recognizable, broken but trying to heal, terrified but refusing to run. I don't know yet, he said honestly. Ask me again in 6 months. Ask me after you've proven that staying is more than just words. Sophie nodded, accepting the boundary. Fair enough. I'll keep proving it. Every single day, I'll keep proving it. Noah drove home through empty streets, his mind full of too many thoughts to process. When he arrived, his neighbor reported that Mia had gone to bed without issue, had said her prayers, something Noah didn't teach her but his neighbor did, and had asked if Grandma Kathy was an angel now. After his neighbor left, Noah went to check on his daughter one more time. Mia was asleep with her unicorn, her small face peaceful in the dim glow of her nightlight. Noah stood there for a long time, watching her breathe, marveling at her resilience and grace. Tomorrow he'd have to tell Mia that her grandmother had died. Tomorrow they'd figure out memorial services and how to explain death to a 5-year-old. Tomorrow the complicated work of grief would begin. But tonight, Noah let himself sit in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this pain. That maybe Catherine Lane's death had created space for new life, new chances, new ways of being family. He didn't believe it yet, didn't trust it yet. But for the first time in 3 years, he could imagine it, and maybe that was enough to start with. Morning arrived with the particular weight that came after sleepless nights spent processing impossible things. Noah heard Mia stirring around 7 and steeled himself for the conversation he'd been rehearsing in his head since midnight. How did you tell a 5-year-old that the grandmother she'd just met was gone? How did you explain that sometimes people only got 3 days together when they should have had years? Mia appeared in his doorway in her pajamas, clutching her unicorn, her hair a wild tangle around her face. She climbed onto Noah's bed without asking and curled into his side with the easy trust of childhood. Daddy, I had a dream about Grandma Kathy, she said quietly. She was in a garden with lots of flowers, and she wasn't sick anymore. She was smiling. Noah's throat tightened. That sounds like a nice dream, baby. It was, except she said goodbye. She said she had to go somewhere beautiful, but she'd always remember me. Mia looked up at Noah with those green eyes that saw too much. That means she died, doesn't it? That's what goodbye dreams mean. Noah had learned long ago not to underestimate his daughter's emotional intelligence, but this still caught him off guard. How do you know about goodbye dreams? Emma's grandpa, remember? She said he came to say goodbye in her dream the night before he died. And then the next morning her mommy was crying. Mia's small hand found Noah's. Is mommy crying? Probably, yes. Can we go see her? I don't want her to be sad alone. Noah closed his eyes, feeling the familiar ache of his daughter's enormous heart. We can call her after breakfast, see how she's doing. Okay? Mia snuggled closer. Daddy, do you think Grandma Kathy knows I loved her, even though I only knew her for 3 days? I think she knows, sweetheart. Sometimes 3 days of real love matters more than years of going through the motions. But Mia absorbed this with her characteristic seriousness. Like how mommy was gone for 3 years, but she loved me the whole time, even when her head was sick. The observation landed like a fist in Noah's chest. Yeah, baby, exactly like that. They made pancakes together, Mia chattering about her dream and asking questions about heaven that Noah answered as honestly as he could without claiming certainty he didn't possess. When they finished eating, Noah called Sophie's number and put it on speaker. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice rough with exhaustion and tears. Hello? Mommy? Mia leaned toward the phone. Are you okay? Daddy said you're probably sad. I am sad, sweetheart. Very sad. But hearing your voice helps. I'm sorry Grandma Kathy died, but I think she's in a really pretty garden now. I saw it in my dream. There was a long pause, then the sound of Sophie's breath catching. That's beautiful, Mia. I think you're right. I think she's somewhere beautiful. Do you want to come and have pancakes with us? We made extra. Noah started to intervene, to give Sophie an out, but she spoke first. I'd love that, if it's okay with your dad. Mia looked at Noah with pleading eyes. He felt the exhaustion in his bones, the weight of too many complicated emotions, the instinct to protect their space. But he also saw his daughter's face, so full of love and concern for a mother she'd only just gotten back. "Come over," Noah said. "We'll be here." Sophie arrived 20 minutes later looking like she'd been put through a ringer. Her eyes were swollen, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup to hide the evidence of a night spent crying. But when Mia ran to hug her, Sophie's whole face transformed with something like gratitude mixed with grief. "Hi, baby girl," Sophie whispered into Mia's hair. "Thank you for calling me." "That's what family does," Mia said matter-of-factly. "We take care of each other when we're sad." Sophie's eyes found Noah's over Mia's head, and he saw the question there. Was she included in that definition of family? Did she still count? Noah looked away, not ready to answer, and focused on reheating pancakes instead. They ate in the living room, Mia between her parents on the couch, talking enough for all three of them. Sophie picked at her food but made an effort to respond to Mia's observations. Noah watched both of them while pretending not to, noting the shadows under Sophie's eyes, the way her hands shook slightly when she held her coffee cup, the careful distance she maintained from his space. "We need to plan a memorial service," Sophie said quietly when Mia had wandered off to play. "My mother didn't have many friends left, but there are a few people from her book club and her old job. I thought maybe something small, nothing fancy." "When were you thinking?" "End of this week? Friday maybe? That gives people time to arrange travel if they need to." Sophie set down her coffee cup. "Noah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. Do you want us there? Me and Mia? Or would it be easier if I did this alone?" Noah studied her face, trying to understand what she was really asking. "It's your mother's funeral. Of course you should be there." "That's not what I asked." Sophie's voice was steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "I'm asking if you want to be there. If you're willing to stand beside me as I bury the only parent I had left, or if that's asking too much after everything." The honesty of it caught Noah off guard. No manipulation, no guilt, just a straightforward question about boundaries and what he could handle. "I'll be there," Noah said finally. "Mia should say goodbye properly, and you shouldn't have to do this alone." "Thank you." Sophie's relief was visible. "I've already arranged with the funeral home for cremation. I thought we could scatter her ashes in the garden at the hospice." She said it was the only place she'd felt peace in years. They spent the next hour making plans, their conversation careful and practical. Guest list, readings, music, whether there should be a reception afterward, the mundane details of death that had to be managed regardless of grief or exhaustion or the complicated history between the people making decisions. Mia reappeared with her art supplies. "I'm making a card for Grandma Kathy to put with her when she goes to the garden." "That's a lovely idea, sweetheart," Sophie said, her voice thick. "What are you going to draw?" "Flowers and butterflies. And our family." Mia was already sketching with fierce concentration. "So she remembers what we look like." Noah and Sophie exchanged a glance, brief, loaded with unspoken things. Our family. Mia had said it so easily, like it was simple fact rather than complicated reality. The next few days passed in a blur of arrangements and difficult conversations. Sophie signed papers and made phone calls while Noah handled logistics and kept Mia's routine as normal as possible. They saw each other daily, always with Mia as buffer, always careful to maintain appropriate distance. Sophie never overstayed her welcome. Noah never suggested she leave before she needed to. They moved around each other like dancers learning new choreography, careful not to step on each other's feet. On Wednesday, Sophie asked if she could take Mia to lunch alone. Noah's first instinct was to say no, to protect Mia from potential disappointment, to maintain control over a situation that felt increasingly out of his hands. But Mia was bouncing with excitement at the prospect, and Sophie had been nothing but consistent since Christmas Eve. 2 hours, Noah said finally, and you text me every 30 minutes so I know everything's okay. Deal. Sophie knelt down to Mia's level. Where should we go, sweetheart? Your choice. The diner with the really good grilled cheese and the milkshakes that are huge. They left together, Mia chattering excitedly while Sophie listened with complete attention. Noah watched from the doorway as Sophie buckled Mia carefully into her car seat, double-checking the straps the way Noah had showed her. Small thing. Meaningless thing. Except it meant Sophie was trying to learn how to be Mia's mother again, one detail at a time. Noah spent those 2 hours in a state of low-level anxiety, checking his phone every 5 minutes, jumping every time it buzzed. But Sophie's texts came like clockwork. Photos of Mia with her grilled cheese, Mia with her milkshake, Mia trying on sunglasses at the drugstore next door. Each image showing his daughter happy and safe and loved. When they returned, Mia was full of stories about their lunch, about how mommy remembered her favorite kind of milkshake and how they'd talked about art and kindergarten and whether butterflies remembered being caterpillars. Mommy said she's getting an apartment, Mia announced, close to us, so she can see me all the time. Noah's eyes found Sophie's. She nodded, her expression cautious. I signed a lease yesterday. Small place, 1 bedroom, about 15 minutes from here. I move in next week. That's a big commitment, Noah said carefully. It's the smallest commitment I can make. Sophie's voice was steady. I'm staying, Noah. I told you that. This is me proving it. Friday arrived too quickly. The memorial service was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at a small chapel near the hospice. Noah dressed Mia in a navy dress that seemed appropriately somber, though she insisted on wearing the butterfly clips in her hair because Grandma Kathy had liked butterflies. They picked up Sophie at her motel. She wore a simple black dress and minimal makeup, her hair pulled back, her whole demeanor radiating exhaustion and grief. She slid into the back seat next to Mia without comment, and Mia immediately took her hand. It's okay to be sad, Mommy, Mia said seriously. Big feelings have to go somewhere. Sophie's laugh was wet. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. Everyone's just finally noticing. The service was small like Sophie had planned. Maybe 20 people gathered in the chapel, Catherine's book club friends, a few former colleagues, some neighbors from her old apartment building. They all looked at Sophie with varying degrees of curiosity and judgment, clearly aware of the years of estrangement and the sudden reconciliation. Noah stayed close to Sophie and Mia, a physical buffer against the weight of other people's opinions. When it was time for eulogies, Sophie stood at the podium with trembling hands and spoke with raw honesty. My mother wasn't an easy person to love, Sophie began, her voice steady despite the tears. She had high standards and little patience for failure. She believed in tough love in an era that's learning that sometimes love just needs to be soft. We spent years at odds, years not speaking, years letting pride and hurt build walls between us. She paused, her eyes finding Mia in the front row. But in her final days, my mother taught me something crucial. It's never too late to try. Never too late to apologize. Never too late to show up, even when showing up feels impossible. She met her granddaughter for the first time 3 days before she died. And in those 3 days, she gave Mia more authentic love than some people manage in a lifetime. Sophie's voice broke. She also gave me permission to forgive myself, to believe that mistakes don't have to be permanent, that absence doesn't have to be forever, that broken things can heal if you're brave enough to do the work. She looked directly at Noah. I'm grateful she lived long enough to teach me that. I just wish I'd learned it sooner. After the service, they gathered in the hospice garden for the scattering of ashes. It was a cold day, the sky heavy with clouds threatening snow, but the garden held a quiet beauty. Mia insisted on being the one to scatter some of the ashes, her small hands solemn as she released them into the wind. Bye, Grandma Kathy, Mia whispered. Thank you for loving me, even for just 3 days. The words broke something open in the small gathering. Several people were crying openly now, moved by the simplicity of a child's grief. Sophie stood beside Mia, one hand on their daughter's shoulder, her own tears falling freely. Noah stood slightly apart, watching his ex-wife and daughter say goodbye to a woman he'd barely known, but who'd somehow changed the trajectory of all their lives. When it was over, the other mourners drifted away. A few stopped to offer Sophie their condolences, to comment on how lovely the service was, to tell her that her mother had spoken of her often in those final weeks. Sophie accepted their words with grace, though Noah could see the exhaustion pulling at her. Finally, it was just the 3 of them in the garden, the ashes scattered, the goodbye said. Can we go home now? Mia asked quietly. I'm tired of being sad. Yeah, baby, Noah said. We can go home." In the car, Mia fell asleep almost immediately, emotionally wrung out. Sophie sat in silence, staring out the window at the passing landscape. Noah navigated traffic and tried not to think about how surreal this all was, driving his ex-wife home from her mother's funeral, their daughter asleep in the back seat, all of them bound together by grief and history, and one little girl's unshakable belief in family. When they pulled up to Sophie's motel, she didn't immediately get out. Instead, she turned to look at Noah with something vulnerable in her eyes. "Would you come up for a minute? There's something I need to give you." Noah glanced at Mia, still sleeping soundly. "I shouldn't leave her in the car." "Bring her. She can sleep on the bed while we talk. Please, Noah. This is important." Against his better judgment, Noah agreed. He carried Mia up to Sophie's room, a modest space that held the bare minimum of personal belongings. Sophie had clearly been living out of a suitcase, nothing permanent, nothing settled. She laid a blanket over Mia and then moved to the small desk where a laptop and some papers were scattered. "My mother left me a letter," Sophie said quietly, holding out an envelope. "She asked me to share it with you. Said you deserve to know the whole truth." Noah took the envelope, feeling its weight. "What whole truth?" "Read it, please. I can't say these things out loud, but she could, and maybe it'll help you understand." Noah sat on the edge of the desk and unfolded the letter. Catherine Lane's shaking handwriting filled 3 pages. He began to read. "Noah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Sophie has found the courage to share my final words. I'm writing this because my daughter is too afraid to tell you certain truths, and I've decided that the dying have a responsibility to speak plainly." Sophie's breakdown after Mia was born wasn't just postpartum depression. It was a complete psychological collapse triggered by trauma she'd never dealt with. When Sophie was 17, she was assaulted by someone she trusted. She never reported it, never told anyone except me, and I responded by telling her to move on, that dwelling on the past was weakness. I sent her to therapy twice and then declared her fixed. I was wrong. So devastatingly wrong. That trauma lived in her body, in her mind, and when she had Mia, when she had this vulnerable little girl to protect, all those buried fears erupted. She wasn't afraid of hurting Mia intentionally. She was terrified she couldn't keep Mia safe, that she'd fail the way I failed her, that history would repeat itself in some horrible way. So she ran. She convinced herself that removing herself from the equation was the only way to guarantee Mia's safety. Was she wrong? Yes. Was she sick? Absolutely. But Noah, she wasn't selfish or cruel. She was broken and trying to protect the child she loved from the mother she'd become. Noah stopped reading, his hands trembling. He looked up at Sophie, who was standing by the window with her arms wrapped around herself, not looking at him. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice came out rough. "Why didn't you tell me about the assault? About what your mother said? About any of it?" "Because I was ashamed." Sophie's voice was barely audible. "Because admitting I was raped meant admitting I was a victim, and I'd spent 10 years convincing myself I wasn't. Because telling you would have meant explaining why I never reported it, why I just pretended it didn't happen, why I let him get away with it." "Sophie." And then after Mia was born, everything that I'd buried came roaring back. Every time I looked at her, I saw vulnerability. I saw all the ways the world could hurt her. I saw myself at 17, and I couldn't... Her voice broke completely. "I couldn't protect her, Noah. I was too broken to protect her, so I left. I convinced myself she was safer with just you, that my damage would contaminate her somehow." Noah set the letter down carefully, his mind reeling. 3 years. 3 years he'd thought Sophie had abandoned them out of selfishness or cowardice or simple lack of love. And all this time she'd been running from trauma that had never been properly addressed, from fear that had calcified into panic, from a mother who taught her that strength meant silence. "You should have told me," he said again, but the anger had drained from his voice. "We were married. I deserve to know." I know you did. But Noah, I was so deep in my sickness I couldn't see straight. All I knew was that I was dangerous. Not because I'd hurt Mia intentionally, but because I couldn't guarantee I'd make the right choices, that I'd protect her properly, that I wouldn't freeze when she needed me most. Sophie finally turned to face him. "I've been in intensive trauma therapy for 2 years. I've processed what happened to me. I've learned to separate past fear from present reality. I'm not the same person who ran. I'm not even the same person I was before Mia was born. I'm someone new, someone who's done the work. Noah looked at this woman, his ex-wife, Mia's mother, a stranger and familiar all at once, and felt the ground shift beneath him. Everything he'd believed about the past 3 years had been built on incomplete information. Sophie hadn't left because she didn't love them. She'd left because she loved Mia too much to risk being the wrong kind of mother. It didn't excuse the abandonment, didn't erase the pain, but it explained it in ways that made his chest ache with a grief he hadn't known he was carrying. I need time, Noah said finally, to process this, to figure out what it means. I understand. Sophie moved back to the window, putting distance between them. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Noah stood, checking that Mia was still sleeping soundly. I should get her home. It's been a long day. Noah, wait. Sophie's hand caught his arm, then immediately released it. Thank you for being here today, for standing beside me, for not making me do this alone. You're Mia's mother, Noah said. The phrase had become his mantra, his way of explaining why he kept showing up when every instinct said to run. That means something. Does it mean something to you? Sophie asked, echoing her question from the hospice parking lot. Or just to Mia? Noah looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the grief and exhaustion to the woman underneath, scarred but healing, broken but rebuilding, terrified but brave enough to stay. Ask me again in 6 months, he said, repeating his earlier words. After you've proven that staying is more than just guilt or grief. After you've shown me you can be the mother Mia needs, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when there's no crisis demanding you rise to the occasion. Sophie nodded, accepting the challenge. 6 months. I'll prove it every single day for 6 months, and then I'll keep proving it, for as long as it takes. Noah carried Mia to the car and buckled her in gently. She stirred slightly, murmuring something about butterflies, then settled back into sleep. As Noah drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Sophie standing in the parking lot, watching them leave, one hand raised in a small wave. He didn't wave back, didn't acknowledge the gesture, just kept driving, his mind full of Catherine's letter, Sophie's confession, and the impossible complexity of healing from wounds you didn't know you carried. That night, after Mia was in bed, Noah pulled out the envelope Catherine had left for his daughter. He held it in his hands for a long time, feeling the weight of words written by a dying woman to a granddaughter she'd barely known, words meant for someday. For when Mia was old enough to understand that families were complicated and love was messy and forgiveness was work. He put the envelope in his desk drawer, safe and waiting. Someday he'd give it to Mia. Someday she'd need to know that her grandmother had seen her own mistakes reflected in her daughter's choices and had tried, in her final days, to break the cycle. But not today. Today, Mia just needed to be 5 years old and certain that love was simple, and families stayed together, and mothers came back when they said they would. Tomorrow was Saturday. Tomorrow, Sophie was moving into her new apartment. And Noah had surprised himself by offering to help, to bring Mia along, to show up for this next step in Sophie's attempt to rebuild a life near the daughter she'd left behind. He didn't know if it was the right choice, didn't know if 6 months would be enough time to trust her again, didn't know if he could ever look at Sophie without seeing both the woman he'd loved and the ghost who'd haunted him for 3 years. But he knew Mia deserved a chance to know her mother, and he knew Sophie deserved a chance to prove she'd changed. So tomorrow he'd show up. He'd help move boxes. He'd watch Sophie try to build something permanent after years of running. And maybe, just maybe, he'd start to believe that broken things really could heal. That absence didn't have to be forever, that families torn apart could find new ways to be whole. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. And for now, that something was enough. Saturday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine, the kind of bright winter day that felt like a gift after weeks of gray. Noah woke to find Mia already dressed and sitting on his bed, her backpack packed with snacks and the stuffed unicorn she'd decided Sophie's new apartment needed. We're helping Mommy move today, Mia announced, as if Noah might have forgotten. So she has a real home, not just a motel room with scratchy towels. Noah smiled despite the anxiety churning in his stomach. You really don't like those towels, do you? They're sad towels, Daddy. Nobody should have sad towels. Mia's logic was unassailable. Our towels are happy. Mommy deserves happy towels too. They arrived at Sophie's new apartment at 9. It was a modest complex in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where kids rode bikes in the parking lot and neighbors said hello. Sophie was already there, directing the minimal furniture delivery, a couch, a bed, a small dining table. She wore jeans and an old sweatshirt, her hair pulled back, and when she saw them arrive, her whole face lit up with something that looked like hope. You came, she said, as if she doubted they would, despite Noah's promise. We said we would. Noah lifted 2 boxes from his trunk. Where do you want these? Kitchen, maybe? I haven't really figured out where anything goes yet. Sophie knelt down as Mia ran to her. Hi, sweetheart. Thank you for helping me today. I brought you my unicorn, Mia said solemnly, so your apartment won't be lonely at night. She's really good at keeping away bad dreams. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. That's the nicest gift anyone's ever given me. Are you sure you want to leave her here? Just for a little while, until you get your own stuffed animals. Mia patted Sophie's cheek with the unselfconscious affection of childhood. Everybody needs something soft to hug when they're sad. Noah watched this exchange and felt something shift in his chest. Mia's capacity for love and forgiveness was staggering. She'd taken her mother's return and her grandmother's death and somehow processed it all into this simple philosophy. People need softness when they hurt, and if you can provide that softness, you should. The morning passed in productive chaos. Noah assembled furniture while Sophie unpacked boxes, and Mia appointed herself decorator, insisting on where each item should go. The apartment slowly transformed from empty shell to actual living space. Books on shelves, dishes in cabinets, curtains hung with Mia's help, even though she mostly just held the measuring tape and provided commentary. Around noon, Noah ordered pizza, and they sat on the floor of Sophie's living room, surrounded by half-empty boxes, eating straight from the delivery box. It felt almost normal, almost like a family doing a family thing. The thought terrified Noah, even as some part of him relaxed into it. Mommy, you need pictures on the walls, Mia announced between bites. Empty walls are sad. You're right. I'll have to find some good ones. Sophie glanced at Noah, something unspoken in her eyes. Maybe I could print some photos, if that's okay? Photos of what? Noah asked carefully. Of Mia. From the past week, and maybe... Sophie hesitated. Maybe some old ones too, from before? I kept a few on my phone. Nothing that would upset anyone, just memories. Noah thought about Sophie's words from the funeral, that her mother had kept pieces of their life even while running from it. Understood now that Sophie had done the same. That absence didn't always mean forgetting. That's fine, he said. Just nothing that'll confuse Mia about what our situation is. Of course, I understand the boundaries. After lunch, while Mia was engrossed in arranging Sophie's bookshelf by color because that's how Belle would do it, Sophie pulled Noah aside to the small balcony. The space barely fit 2 people, but it offered privacy and a view of the parking lot where kids were playing street hockey. Can I ask you something? Sophie's voice was quiet. And will you promise to answer honestly, even if it's not what I want to hear? Noah braced himself. Okay. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Not now, I know it's too soon, but eventually? Or am I always going to be the woman who abandoned her family, no matter how much work I do or time I put in? The question hung between them, weighted with everything unsaid. Noah looked out at the parking lot, watching a kid take a shot on goal and miss, then retrieve the ball to try again. Persistence in the face of failure, trying again even when success wasn't guaranteed. I don't know, Noah said finally. I want to say yes. I want to believe that people can change, and broken things can heal, and all those things we tell ourselves because the alternative is too bleak. But Sophie, you left. You left Mia when she was 2 years old and couldn't understand why Mommy was gone. You left me to explain the inexplicable and hold together a family that was falling apart, and his voice cracked. You left me alone when I needed you most. I know, and I'm sorry. I will spend the rest of my life being sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it. Noah turned to face her. Sorry doesn't give Mia back the 3 years she lost with her mother. Sorry doesn't undo the nights I spent crying in the shower so she wouldn't hear me. Sorry is just a word, Sophie. It doesn't actually change anything. Then what does? Sophie's voice was raw. What do I have to do to prove I'm different now? To prove I won't run again? Tell me and I'll do it. Anything. Everything. Time. Noah's answer was simple but absolute. Time and consistency and showing up. Not just when it's convenient or when there's a crisis, but on boring Tuesdays. When Mia has a cold and is cranky, when nothing dramatic is happening, and you're just being a parent because that's what parents do. I can do that. I want to do that. We'll see. Noah started to go back inside, then stopped. But Sophie, for what it's worth, I believe you're trying, and that's more than I thought I'd ever be able to say. Sophie's relief was visible, her shoulders dropping from around her ears. That's enough. For now, that's enough. The weeks that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Sophie came over 3 times a week for dinner, always bringing something, groceries, a bottle of wine for Noah, art supplies for Mia. She never overstayed, never pushed for more than Noah offered, but she was consistent, reliably, exhaustingly consistent. She attended Mia's kindergarten Valentine's Day party, standing awkwardly at the back of the room while the other mothers gave her curious looks. She picked Mia up from school on Wednesdays so Noah could make his weekly therapy appointment, something he'd started after Sophie's return because processing 3 years of single parenthood and sudden co-parenting required professional help. She showed up for Mia's dance recital and her school project presentation and every little milestone that came with being 5 and navigating the world. And slowly, incrementally, Noah felt his walls beginning to lower. Not crumble. He wasn't ready for that, but lower enough that he could see Sophie more clearly. Could acknowledge that she really was doing the work, that her promises weren't empty, that maybe, just maybe, she really had changed. One evening in early March, after Mia was asleep, Sophie lingered at the door longer than usual. "Can I show you something?" she asked. "I've been wanting to share this, but I wasn't sure if you'd want to see it." Noah's guard went up immediately. "What is it?" Sophie pulled out her phone and navigated to a folder. "Photos. From the past 3 years. I took them even though I wasn't there. Places that reminded me of you both. Moments I imagined you were having. It sounds crazy, I know, but it helped me feel less disconnected." She handed Noah the phone. He scrolled through images that made his chest tight. A playground at sunset with the caption, "Mia would love these swings." A bookstore display of children's books with Noah would read these to her in his patient voice. A pair of small rain boots in a shop window tagged, "First day of kindergarten, probably needed these." Sophie had been living a parallel life, imagining their moments, holding space for a daughter she'd left behind. It was heartbreaking and infuriating and somehow touching all at once. "Why are you showing me this?" Noah asked, his voice rough. "Because I need you to know I never forgot. Even when staying away felt like the only option, I carried you both with me every single day." Sophie took her phone back. "And I need you to understand that coming back wasn't easy. Every day I told myself I didn't deserve a second chance, that you'd be better off without my mess. But then my mother got sick and it felt like a sign. One last chance to try to make things right before it was too late." "Do you think your mother's death was a gift?" Noah couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "That losing her gave you permission to come back?" "No, I think it gave me courage to face what I'd been running from. There's a difference." Sophie met his eyes steadily. "Noah, I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm just asking you to believe that I'm here because I choose to be. Not because I have to be, not because circumstances forced me, but because I want to be Mia's mother. And I want to prove to you that I can be." Noah looked at this woman, his ex-wife, his daughter's mother, a stranger who was becoming less strange every day, and felt something fundamental shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. Recognition that Sophie's journey had been its own kind of hell. That healing from trauma wasn't linear. That sometimes people had to fall completely apart before they could rebuild themselves into something stronger. "Okay," Noah said quietly. "I believe you." Sophie's eyes widened. "Really?" You've been showing up for 2.5 months. You've been consistent and reliable and everything you said you'd be. So yes, I believe you're trying." He paused. "Believing you won't run again? That's going to take longer. I understand. And I'll keep proving it, however long it takes." After Sophie left, Noah sat in the dark living room and thought about trust, about how it was built slowly, moment by moment, choice by choice, about how Sophie was choosing them every single day, and maybe that was enough to start rebuilding something new. By April, the dynamic had shifted again. Sophie started having Mia sleep over at her apartment on Friday nights, carefully planned, with extensive lists and backup plans and Noah's number on speed dial. The first time Mia stayed there, Noah barely slept, his phone clutched to his chest, waiting for the call that something had gone wrong. But morning came with a text of Mia eating pancakes and smiling, and Noah felt another small piece of his fear dissolve. The sleepovers became regular. Then Sophie asked about adding Sunday afternoons. Then Wednesday dinners became Tuesday dinners too, because Mia asked, and Sophie had learned to cook Mia's favorite chicken nuggets just right. Their lives were blending in ways Noah hadn't planned, hadn't quite authorized, but couldn't quite bring himself to stop because Mia was so happy. So completely, radiantly happy in a way she hadn't been in 3 years. One Saturday in May, Noah's mother's birthday, he found himself at Sophie's apartment unplanned. Mia had insisted they bring flowers to Mommy's house because flowers make sad days better. And somehow Noah had agreed. Sophie answered the door in yoga pants and a t-shirt, clearly not expecting company, but she welcomed them in without hesitation. "It's my mom's birthday," Noah said abruptly. "She died 5 years ago, and it's her birthday, and Mia thought flowers might help." Sophie's expression softened with understanding. "I remember. She loved yellow roses." "You remember that?" "Noah, I remember everything about your family. They were the only family I had that ever felt like home." Sophie took the flowers Mia offered. "Thank you, sweetheart. These are beautiful." "Daddy's sad," Mia announced. "He has his sad face even though he's trying to hide it." "I'm not sad, baby. I'm just remembering." "Remembering can be sad," Mia said wisely. "That's okay. Big feelings have to go somewhere." Sophie met Noah's eyes over Mia's head. "Do you want to stay? I was about to make lunch. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches, but maybe—" She trailed off, leaving the invitation open. Noah should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, should have protected himself from this growing intimacy that felt dangerous and comforting in equal measure. Instead, he said, "Okay, lunch sounds good." They sat on Sophie's balcony, the three of them squeezed into a space meant for one, eating sandwiches and watching the neighborhood kids play. Mia chatted about her upcoming field trip and how Emma had decided they were going to be marine biologists instead of veterinarians now. Sophie listened with complete attention, asking questions, laughing at Mia's observations, and Noah watched them both and felt something he hadn't let himself feel in 3 years. Hope. Not the desperate, fragile hope of early grief, but something more solid. Something that suggested maybe they really could build something new from the wreckage of what they'd lost. "I miss your parents too," Sophie said quietly when Mia had gone inside to use the bathroom. "Your mother especially. She was kind to me even when mine wasn't. She made me feel like I belonged." "She loved you," Noah said. "Even after you left, she'd ask about you. Wonder if you were okay. Say that maybe you had your reasons and we should give you grace." "I didn't deserve her grace." "Maybe not, but she gave it anyway. That's who she was." Noah looked at Sophie, really looked at her. "I think she'd be glad you came back. Glad you're trying to make things right." "Do you think she'd forgive me?" "Yes, without question. She believed people could change if they wanted it badly enough." Noah paused. "And she'd tell me I was being stubborn and holding on to anger that was hurting me more than it was hurting you." Sophie's smile was sad. "Smart woman. The smartest." They sat in companionable silence, watching clouds drift across the spring sky. When Mia returned, she wedged herself between them, content just to be near both her parents. It felt almost normal, almost like family. The almost terrified Noah, but the almost also felt like possibility. June brought Mia's kindergarten graduation, a production of such elaborate pageantry that Noah wondered if they were actually graduating from law school. He stood with other parents, camera ready, watching the children file in wearing construction paper mortarboards. Sophie stood beside him. Not accidentally, not because she'd happened to arrive at the same time, but because Noah had called her specifically to tell her when and where, and she'd cleared her entire day to be there. They stood shoulder to shoulder in the crowded gymnasium, and when Mia waved from the stage, they waved back in unison. After the ceremony, Mia ran to them with her diploma, and Noah caught her mid-leap while Sophie laughed and took pictures. Then Emma's mother approached, a woman Noah knew from months of playdates and school events, and smiled warmly at all of them. "It's so nice to finally meet you," she said to Sophie. "Mia talks about you all the time. We're so glad you're back in her life." Sophie's surprise was visible. Thank you. Thank you. Emma would love to have Mia over sometime. Maybe both of you could bring her?" The invitation was offered casually, including both of them naturally, and Noah realized that to the outside world, they probably looked like any other family, together, united, whole. The realization should have panicked him. Instead, it felt like relief. That night, after celebratory ice cream and an exhausted Mia was finally asleep, Noah walked Sophie to her car. She'd parked at the end of the street, claiming she needed the exercise, and the evening was warm enough that the walk felt pleasant rather than obligatory. "Thank you for telling me about today," Sophie said quietly. "I know you didn't have to include me. You're her mother. Of course you should be there. Still, 6 months ago you could barely look at me without anger in your eyes. Now we're standing at her graduation together like a team. That's..." Sophie's voice caught. "That's more than I ever let myself hope for." Noah stopped walking, turning to face her under the streetlight. "It's been 6 months, almost exactly 6 months since Christmas Eve." Sophie's eyes widened slightly, understanding the significance. 6 months. The timeline he'd given her, the proving period. "Noah, you've shown up," Noah said. "Every single day, every single week, you've been exactly who you promised you'd be. Consistent, reliable, present." He took a breath. "I'm not saying I've forgiven you for leaving. I don't know if I ever fully will. The scar tissue is there. The memory of that pain doesn't just disappear. I know, I don't expect..." "But," Noah continued, "I'm saying I believe you. I believe you've changed. I believe you won't run. And I believe Mia deserves to have both her parents active in her life, not as visitors, not as weekend guests, but as real, permanent parts of her daily world." Sophie's hands had come up to cover her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we should figure out a real custody arrangement. Official, legal, consistent. Maybe 50-50 eventually, if that's what works. Maybe start with a more gradual transition. But Sophie, I'm ready to share our daughter with you. Truly share her. Not just give you scraps of time when I feel generous, but actually co-parent with you." "Noah, Sophie's voice broke completely. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured or obligated or..." "I'm sure." And Noah realized as he said it that he was. The fear was still there, probably always would be, but it was manageable now, balanced by the reality of 6 months of Sophie showing up, 6 months of her proving that words could become actions, and actions could become patterns, and patterns could become trust. Sophie closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around Noah in a hug that was pure gratitude and relief. Noah stiffened for just a moment. Physical affection still felt complicated, but then he let himself relax into it, let himself acknowledge that this woman wasn't the enemy, wasn't the ghost who'd haunted him. She was just Sophie, flawed and trying, human and healing. When they pulled apart, Sophie was still crying. "I won't let you down. I swear I won't let you down." "I know, you've already proven that." Noah smiled, and it felt genuine. "Now go home and get some sleep. We have a lot of logistics to figure out, and knowing you, you're going to want spreadsheets and color-coded calendars." Sophie laughed through her tears. "You remember that about me?" "I remember everything about you. I just spent 3 years trying not to." Over the next weeks, they worked out the details with lawyers and mediators. Mia would stay with Sophie 3 nights a week, gradually building to half-time as they all adjusted. Holidays would be split or shared depending on Mia's preferences. Both parents would have equal say in major decisions about education, health, and activities. It was formal and legal and exactly what they needed: clear boundaries, explicit expectations, protection for all of them. When they told Mia about the new arrangement, she looked between them with those impossibly wise eyes and said, "Does this mean you're not mad at Mommy anymore?" Noah chose his words carefully. "It means I trust that Mommy's going to be here for you, that she's not going anywhere, and that you deserve to spend lots of time with both of us." "But do you still love her?" Mia asked with the brutal directness of childhood. "Like you used to?" The question landed like a brick. Noah glanced at Sophie, who was very carefully not looking at him, her whole body radiating tension. "Love is complicated, baby," Noah said finally. "The way I loved your mother before, that was a long time ago. We're different people now, but I care about her. I want good things for her, and I'm grateful she came back to be your mom." Mia absorbed this with the seriousness she gave to all important matters. Then she said, "Okay, but I think you should be friends. Because friends are people who care about each other and want good things for each other. And that's what you just said." Out of the mouths of babes. Noah met Sophie's eyes and saw something vulnerable there. Something that asked if friendship was possible. If they could rebuild not what they'd had, but something new. Something that honored their history without being trapped by it. "Yeah," Noah said, speaking to Mia but looking at Sophie. "Friend sounds about right." July came with heat and long days, and Mia splitting her time between two homes with the easy adaptability of childhood. She had clothes at both places, her own space in both apartments, two sets of bedtime routines that were different but equally loved. And most importantly, she had two parents who showed up, sometimes together, sometimes separately, but always present. One Saturday in late July, Noah was dropping Mia off at Sophie's when a summer storm rolled in fast. Rain poured down in sheets, thunder cracking overhead, and Mia squealed with delight because she loved storms with the fearlessness only children possessed. "Come inside until it passes," Sophie called from her doorway. "No point driving in this." Noah hesitated only briefly before agreeing. They settled in Sophie's living room while Mia pressed her face to the window, narrating the storm like a sports commentator. Sophie made coffee. She remembered how Noah liked it, cream, but no sugar, and they sat on opposite ends of the couch with careful space between them. "I have something for you," Sophie said after a moment. "I've been meaning to give it to you, but I wasn't sure if the time was right. But I think now it is." She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a framed photograph. When she handed it to Noah, his breath caught. It was a picture he'd never seen. Him holding newborn Mia in the hospital, his face full of wonder and terror and overwhelming love. Sophie must have taken it in those first hours after birth, before everything fell apart. "I kept it with me," Sophie said quietly. "Through everything. Through Colorado and Boulder and every place I ran to. I'd look at it and remember what I was fighting to get back to, who I wanted to be strong enough to return to." Noah stared at the photo, at his younger self's face, at tiny Mia's scrunched newborn features. "I didn't know you'd taken this. I took hundreds that day, but this one captured something, the way you looked at her like she was the entire universe, like nothing else mattered as long as you had her." Sophie's voice caught. "I wanted to be able to look at her that way, without fear, without panic, just pure love. And it took me 3 years and so much work, but Noah, I can do that now. I can look at Mia and just feel love, nothing else. No fear, no shame, no certainty that I'm going to fail her. Just love." Noah set the photo down carefully on the coffee table. "You're a good mother now, Sophie. I see it. The way Mia lights up around you, the way she trusts you completely. You've earned that. Thank you. That means more coming from you than anything else could." Sophie paused. "Can I ask you something? And will you be honest?" "Always." "Do you ever think about what might have happened if I'd stayed? If I'd gotten help before everything broke? If we'd fought through it together instead of me running?" Noah considered the question, really considered it. "Sometimes, usually late at night when I can't sleep, I think about who we were before Mia. How happy we were. How certain I was that we'd figure out parenthood together." He looked at Sophie. But I also think we might not have made it, because you weren't ready to face your trauma, and I wasn't equipped to help you through it. We were kids playing house, Sophie, 22 years old and thinking love was enough to overcome anything. And now? Now we're adults who've been broken and rebuilt, who've learned that love isn't enough. You need honesty and therapy and boundaries and work. So much work. Noah smiled slightly. So no, I don't think we would have made it if you'd stayed. I think we both needed to fall apart to figure out how to be whole. Sophie nodded, accepting this truth. Do you think... She trailed off, then started again. Do you think there's any possibility of us someday being more than friends? Not now, I'm not asking for that. But someday, when enough time has passed and enough healing has happened? The question sat heavy between them. Noah's first instinct was to say no, to protect himself from that possibility, to keep the boundaries clear and safe. But he'd learned something over the past 6 months. Certainty was an illusion. Life was messy and complicated and full of possibilities you never imagined. I don't know, he said honestly. Ask me again in another 6 months, or a year, or whenever enough time has passed that we can answer that question without all this history weighing it down. That's fair. Sophie's smile was sad but accepting. I can wait. I've gotten good at waiting. The storm passed and Noah drove home through wet streets that reflected the streetlights like scattered stars. He thought about Sophie's question, about possibilities, about the strange journey that had brought them from strangers to lovers to spouses to ghosts to something new that didn't have a name yet. He thought about his mother's voice saying, "Give people grace," and Catherine's letter talking about second chances, and Mia's absolute certainty that love was simple and families were forever. And he realized that maybe they were all right. Maybe grace and second chances and simple love were possible, not easy. Not without scars, but possible. 3 months later, in October, Noah found himself at Sophie's apartment for Mia's 7th birthday party. Sophie had insisted on hosting because her place had a better backyard for the dozen kindergarten friends Mia had invited. Emma was there with her mothers and several other families Noah recognized from school events. They'd fallen into an easy co-hosting rhythm, Noah manning the grill while Sophie supervised games, both of them moving around each other with the practiced ease of people who'd learned each other's patterns. When it was time for cake, they stood on either side of Mia, singing while their daughter glowed with joy. "Make a wish, baby," Sophie said, and Mia squeezed her eyes shut with dramatic intensity. Later, after the guests had left and Mia was showing Emma's mothers her room, Sophie and Noah stood in the kitchen washing dishes. Their hands brushed in the soapy water, and neither pulled away immediately. "She wished for us to be a family again," Sophie said quietly. "I saw her looking at both of us before she blew out the candles." "That's what she wished for." "We are a family," Noah said, "just a different kind than she probably imagines." "Is it different than you imagine?" Noah looked at Sophie, really looked at her. At the woman she'd become. Strong but soft. Scarred but healed. Present and committed, and everything she'd promised to be. And he realized that somewhere along the way, his anger had transformed into something else. Not the passionate love of their youth, but something deeper. Respect, admiration, trust, and underneath all of that, the ember of something that might grow into love again if they gave it time and space and nurturing. "No," he said finally. "I think we're exactly the family we're supposed to be." Sophie's smile was radiant. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Noah set down the dish he was washing and turned to face her fully. "Sophie, I'm not ready to rush into anything. We've both worked too hard on healing to risk it by moving too fast. But I'm also not going to pretend I don't feel something when I look at you. Something that's not just co-parenting or friendship. Something that might become more if we let it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying let's take this slow. Let's keep doing what we're doing, showing up, being consistent, building trust. Let's see where it leads without forcing it. And maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Not as who we were, but as who we've become." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Happy ones this time. "I can do slow. Slow is good. Slow means we're being careful with each other, with Mia, with what we're building." Exactly. They went back to washing dishes, but something had shifted. Some invisible barrier had been acknowledged and gently moved aside. not destroyed. They weren't ready for that, just moved enough to see what lay beyond it. That night, after Mia was asleep in Sophie's guest room that had slowly become her permanent room, Noah found himself lingering at the door again. Sophie walked him out, and they stood in the hallway under the fluorescent lights, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you," Sophie said, "for today, for every day, for giving me this chance." "You earned it," Noah said simply. "Can I hug you? Is that okay?" In answer, Noah stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Sophie. This time there was no stiffness, no hesitation, just two people who'd been through hell together and had somehow found their way back. Sophie's arms came around him tight, and they stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the fluorescent hallway of her apartment building, holding all the years of pain and loss and healing that had brought them here. When they pulled apart, Sophie was smiling through tears. "Good night, Noah." "Good night, Sophie." Noah drove home through quiet streets, his mind full of thoughts about second chances and slow burns and families that break and heal in unexpected ways. He thought about Mia's wish for them to be a family again and realized they already were, just not in the way they'd been before. Something new. Something built on honesty and work and the hard-won knowledge that love alone wasn't enough. You needed trust. You needed consistency. You needed to show up even when it was hard. And Sophie had shown up. Every single day for 9 months, she'd shown up. That had to mean something. 6 months later, in April, 1 year and 4 months after that Christmas Eve encounter in the mall, Noah took Sophie on their first official date. Not a co-parenting meeting, not a birthday party, an actual date, just the two of them, while Mia stayed with Emma's family for a sleepover. They went to the restaurant where they'd had their first date 12 years ago, a small Italian place that was somehow still standing. They ordered wine and pasta and talked about everything except Mia, their jobs, their therapy journeys, their individual healing, their separate lives that were slowly weaving back together. And at the end of the night, when Noah walked Sophie to her car, he kissed her. Gentle, tentative, full of question marks. Sophie kissed him back with tears streaming down her face, her hands coming up to cup his jaw. When they pulled apart, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "We're taking this slow," he reminded her. And himself. "The slowest," Sophie agreed. "No rushing, no pressure, just seeing where this goes." "But Sophie," Noah pulled back enough to look her in the eyes. "I'm ready to try, really try, to build something new with you, to see if we can be not just co-parents, but partners again. Different partners than before. Better ones." "I'm ready too. I've been ready. I'll wait as long as you need." "I know. That's why I'm not asking you to wait anymore." They dated for 8 months, carefully, intentionally, always with Mia's well-being at the center of every decision. They went slowly, learning each other again, discovering who they'd become in the years apart. Noah learned about Sophie's trauma work, her art, her quiet life in Boulder, where she'd learned to be alone with herself. Sophie learned about Noah's journey through single parenthood, his own therapy, the man he'd become when he had no choice but to be strong. They fought sometimes, real fights about boundaries and expectations, and the lingering hurt that never quite disappeared. But they fought fairly, with honesty and respect, and they always came back together. Always chose each other again. On Christmas Eve, 2 years exactly since Sophie had appeared in that mall food court, Noah proposed. Not with grand gestures or public declarations, but quietly, in Sophie's apartment, with Mia present because she was part of this too. Part of every decision they made. He got down on one knee, holding a simple ring, and said, "I'm not asking you to be who you were. I'm asking you to be who you are now. My partner. Mia's mother. The woman who did the work and showed up and proved that people really can change. Will you marry me again? Will you build a new life with us?" Sophie cried so hard she could barely speak, but she managed to say yes. And Mia, wise, beautiful, heartbreaking Mia, wrapped her arms around both of them and said, "See, I told you we were family. I've been telling you forever." They married 6 months later in the hospice garden where they'd scattered Catherine's ashes, because that place represented beginnings that came from endings. Mia was their only attendant, wearing a dress the color of butterflies, carrying flowers for the grandmother she'd barely known, but who'd changed everything by dying at exactly the right moment. The ceremony was small, Just Emma's family and a few close friends and Noah's neighbor who'd helped so many times when he was drowning. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about showing up and doing the work, and choosing each other every day even when it was hard. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you," Sophie said, tears streaming down her face. "I can't promise I'll never struggle or stumble or need help, but I promise I'll stay. I'll stay through the hard times and get the help I need. I'll never run from us again." "I can't promise I'll always trust easily," Noah replied. "I can't promise the past won't sometimes rise up and make me afraid. But I promise I'll keep choosing you. I'll keep giving you chances to prove what I already know, that you're here, that you're real, that this is real." After they kissed and Mia cheered and everyone clapped, they stood together in that garden, the three of them. And Noah felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not perfect. Not without scars. But whole in a way that acknowledged the breaking and the healing both. That night, after Mia was asleep in what was now officially their shared home, Noah had sold his place and they'd bought something new together, fresh start in a space that belonged to all of them. Sophie and Noah sat on the back porch watching fireflies blink in the darkness. "Do you ever wonder what your mother would think?" Sophie asked. "About all of this? About us finding our way back?" Noah thought about his mother's voice saying, "Give people grace." Thought about Catherine's letter, about second chances. Thought about all the people who'd loved them and hurt them and shaped them into who they'd become. "I think she'd say we did it right," Noah said. "Not easy, not clean, but right. We fell apart so we could learn how to be better when we came back together." "And Mia?" They both looked through the window at their daughter, asleep in her room, dreaming whatever dreams 7-year-olds dreamed. "Mia knew all along," Noah said. "She knew we were family, even when we didn't. She saw what we couldn't, that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up." Sophie's hand found Noah's in the darkness. "We're really doing this, building a life together again." "We really are." "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Noah admitted. "But that's okay. Being scared means it matters. And you're worth being scared for." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching fireflies dance and Mia sleep and the future unfold in ways they couldn't predict. They'd learned the hard way that certainty was an illusion, that life was messy and complicated and full of surprises, some devastating, some beautiful, all of them necessary. But they'd also learned something else, that families could break and heal. That absence didn't have to be forever. That people could change if they wanted it badly enough. That second chances were possible if you were brave enough to take them. And most importantly, they'd learned that love wasn't enough on its own. You needed trust and work and consistency and time. You needed to show up even when it was hard. You needed to do the work when no one was watching. You needed to choose each other every day, not just once. They'd learned all of that the hard way, through 3 years of separation and pain and slow, agonizing healing. But they'd learned it. And now, finally, they were living it. Not perfect, not without scars, not pretending the past hadn't happened, but together, present, whole. A family, rebuilt, redefined, and real. Exactly as Mia had always known they would be.